everyone, Nicole here with a video walkthrough of the Underdog Tools browser extension offered by Rotogrinders.com. If you don't have this extension installed, it's pretty simple. You can get a direct link, or you can go to the Chrome Web Store, the Microsoft Edge Web Store, or the Mozilla Firefox Web Store, and search for Rotogrinders and download the Underdog Tools extension. Once you've added it, it's browser specific. You go on to Underdog Fantasy, and there will be an extension option with the RG logo. We'll have this little logo. You can click on that, and you need to sign in with your RG credentials. Once you've done that, you'll get a notification saying that you've successfully signed in. Premium members will have additional content on Underdog now when they enter a contest. Those live under the Pick'em tab. So when you go to Pick'em now, just make sure you refresh the page and it picks up the sign-in credentials. You're going to start to see Rotogrinders projections. This is very handy for player props. We've got interceptions, completions, the rush yards, everything you could want here for NFL, NBA, and MLB so far. So you'll see these projections, and then you can start comparing the difference with the Rotogrinders projections and the actual prop line offered by Underdog and decide which over and under picks you want to start making. Right, so this one's really close. This one is an over for us, those kind of things based on what we're seeing on the RG projections and the props offered. You can go by sport, or you can go to see all of them at the same time. So here's just NFL, just NBA, and this works on the over-under tab and also on the rivals tab. So under rivals, you're comparing two guys in a certain stat category with each other. So anywhere with the orange markings, you've got Rotogrinders projections active for them, and you're comparing that with each player. We hope this will make it much easier and quicker for you to go take our projections, compare them to the site's offerings, and then make informed decisions on what contest to enter and who to play. Until next time, this has been Nicole Valencia for Rotogrinders.com.
What is up, Rotogrinders? Week 18 for the very first time ever. It is the information slate. They're all information slates. I don't know why we call it the information slate. It's kind of the lack of information slate, actually, because, well, we're trying to figure out what some of these teams are going to do that splice through motivation. Some teams absolutely need this game to win, to get to the playoffs. Some teams are thinking about their vacations and hitting the golf course and things like that. So yeah, and there's not a lot of big totals. We talked about this pre-show, amongst other things. Bringing in Grant Neiffer. Grant, how are things in your world? How do you feel about today's? It's the slate you can win some money on. There you go, lipstick on a pig.
O'Boyle rules.
Who rules?
O'Boyle.
I'm aware of O'Doyle. Who's O'Boyle?
Tim Boyle.
I was supposed to get that.
I don't know. It's at this point in the season, I'm exhausted, and I was trying to think of a thing to lead into. But yeah, this slate is hot garbage.
Yeah, it's kind of rough, but in theory, like there's going to be some edges because some people might not kind of dig in through some things that are very, very important. By the way, right now there's some things right now we don't know. We're not aware of when actives and inactives drop. At least for the 1 o'clock games, 11:30. There's almost definitely going to be a surprise or two. It's like, oh well, I kind of thought this was going to happen, and kind of splice through things more than any other time. The actives and inactives are crucial, of course, for the late slate as well. Those come out an hour and a half before those games as well. But Andre, we're looking at. So one of the interesting things as far as this slate is that the two best players, objectively, however you want to have the conversation, the two best players are at least on two teams that are highly motivated. As far as motivation today, the best running back, Jonathan Taylor, the Colts, they want to win. the best wide receiver today, Cooper Kupp, he wants to win. He also has incentives to get all-time records as well too, which are at least in reach. Well, we can kind of run through those later on in the show as well. But yeah, your general approach here today, Andre, and there's also some weather lurking as well. I'll go ahead and drop Ross' weather page in our Discord channel in a second. But maybe Devin can do that. He's a multitasker. Producer Devin, all over it. Andre, what are we doing as far as this slate? Are you as enthused about it as Grant appears to be?
Sorry, yeah. It's very, very, very complicated a little bit to just navigate through, but then again, it's not at the same time, because there's some plays that I really think I'm firmly just standing on and standing by and going to stand with and just ride or die with and hope that it turns out the way I think it is and go from there.
Yeah, well, we talk a lot of motivation throughout the show. There's a thought that the Packers, they locked up the one spot. They're going to be resting some guys. Rodgers does want to start. He does want to play, maybe to solidify his MVP status, whatever it may be. I don't know how long he'll stick around for. The line certainly suggests he's not going to be in that game forever. They're currently 3-point favorites at the Lions. It would be much greater if there wasn't a threat of him potentially sitting. Same deal with like Devontae Adams or even Jones and Dillon. The Patriots are kind of sort of in the middle. Tampa's kind of sort of in the middle. Cincinnati, we know, is resting. Teams that are fully motivated, the Bills, the Titans, the Colts, the Saints, San Francisco, and the Rams. And there's other ones just kind of sort of playing out the string. They've been eliminated for several weeks.
The Patriots.
The Patriots are kind of in the middle. They're sort of in the middle because they really can't move up. There's not a lot of incentive for them. They're in the playoffs, right? And then they have a 5% chance of winning the division.
Yeah. What do they need? They need the Bills.
Well, they got a 5% chance to win the division, according to 538. Like it's highly unlikely. I think
yes,
part of
because
that is,
the Bills are massive favorites.
Correct. Yeah. So like maybe the Patriots are in the playoffs. It's not like a do or die situation. And
yeah, but they want to play at home, Daniel.
I kind of ran through this stuff, and I don't think that. I think it's kind of sort of in the middle as far as what their information may or not be. That's what my notes have. And when I was kind of running through it a couple of days ago, as far as I don't know if it's dependent on they have to win to play at home. I don't think that's a thing, but I could be wrong. But just again, there's a chance that they kind of play it cool. They're also playing the Dolphins. Some potential weather in that game, by the way. That's one of them. I did mention it. Let's kind of throw it out there. At least a chance of a shower or two. Not a big deal. The big ones. Orange in Baltimore, freezing rain, miserable cold throughout the game is an expectation. Cincinnati and Cleveland should be an absolutely gross football game. This is like an old school throwback Thursday nighter. 20-mile-per-hour sustained winds, stronger gust in the 30-mile-per-hour range. Shout out to Roth for this. Two backup quarterbacks, should be a really gross game. The Cleveland side, the defense is going to be obviously very, very popular. And also the Buffalo game, potentially 20-mile-per-hour sustained winds, gust well over 30. And Grant, I don't really freak out about wind too much until it starts getting around 20, 25. And I know Buffalo, they're kind of used to it, but also Allen's not been great at times in this weather too. And, he is fully motivated. He's one of the best quarterbacks, in DFS. So certainly he's on our brains. Yeah, we'll talk quarterbacks in a second, but how much do you care about that? How much does that affect you? And the other part is which is so weird, is that there's not a lot of value in the slate, at least not now. And you'd think last week of the season, there'd be a lot of value plays who's kind of parsing through them. But that's not the case. There's value's bad and kind of non-existent, which is so strange.
Yeah, no, it's not great value. The slate, it's not a great slate overall. It's a lot of unknowns. And you talked about Josh Allen. I mean, the fact that he's going to be 13% owned, I'm kind of just fading him. Could work out terribly, but I don't really see a need to use him. I mean, they're not going to want to run him on the ground a ton. Jets are historically terrible against the run this year. So they're probably just going to run the ball Singletary and kind of play a conservative offense here, I would guess. I mean, we'll see if the Jets somehow get out to an early lead, it might change the game script a little bit. But more than likely, Allen's probably not going to be the winning quarterback this week because a lot of his value comes from the fact that he does a lot with his legs. So I'm probably fading Allen, and the rest of the quarterbacks, like everyone's kind of priced where they should be, like Stafford, Hill, Huntley, Murray, all kind of offer about as much value as their price tag is. All of them have some upside, but all of them are going to be heavily played. The only two guys that I really think offer some value for their price tags and their ownership are Russell Wilson and David Mills.
Davis Mills. Yeah. Man. All right. Let's throw it to Andre as far as his thoughts as far as quarterback. By the way, I'm pulling up the ownership stuff as well. And as is always the case, FanDuel, it's just easier to pay up, for your quarterback. DK makes it a little bit trickier. And again, some stuff might filter on through. Maybe at 11:30, we get some weird actives and inactives, and all of a sudden we get like a chalky Jamal Williams or something like that can kind of sort of make stuff happen. I have no idea. Just kind of throwing that name out there, but just somebody probably is going to pop up like, oh, that guy's not playing today. This guy should get a bunch more usage. We're seeing Allen is basically the highest owned guy on FanDuel. Him and Murray tied essentially at 14-ish%. On DK, Allen at 13% as well. You mentioned Kyler Murray fully motivated facing Russ Wilson, who you mentioned. Those two, potentially, if you want to play the narratives, make your own storyline, potentially the last game for Russ with Seattle. That is the highest total on the board, 47.5. That is the highest total. No other game is higher than 45, which is just, again, that kind of speaks to the slate. Andre, feel free to give your overall thoughts as far as the slate, whatever you have, for us. Otherwise, jump right in at quarterback. And how much are you prioritize spending up a guy like Allen or a guy like Kyler Murray?
I do not like Allen today because of the weather there in Buffalo. I think history has shown that he has not performed well in those type of elements. So to me, I think like the last game, I think there was some type of high wind was, I think, the Patriots game. I think was the last time they had that type of situation. And he only had like 12 fantasy points, and he had 30 attempts with 15 passes completed, which isn't bad, but it's just like it's not going to obviously, it's just not ideal for this situation. And granted, it's against the New York Jets and not the Patriots this time around, so he can perform well and have an upside game. But he's someone I'm just probably going to be either have very little of or none at all. Not sure. So I'd rather just try to honestly get to a guy like Kyler Murray, who I think is still a little underpriced for his price, and he seems to be getting back on track to how he was playing before. We got a great matchup against Seattle. Obviously he's the highest total on the slate, so I expect everyone to go to him. But I'm also interested in the other side of the ball, like Grant mentioned before, a guy like Russell Wilson too. I think is fantastic to go with. If this ownership is true and it holds to it being like 2.8% or 3%, I love it. I love to play Russell Wilson today in tournaments. I think he has a chance to go out and do something amazing today. And then another guy that I think we have low ownership on that I'm going to try to take advantage of, that's a spin up option, is Tom Brady, because we have no idea what they're going to do. Like literally no idea what they're going to do. Like I think last season they were kind of in the same situation where they could have rested their guys, but they decided to play. And just to get the incentives, if I'm correct, and everyone got there to get their incentives. And he had like 35 fantasy points last year, I believe. So in this type of spot. So I think it's kind of worth taking a shot on him in some GPPs and seeing how it goes. Another guy I do really love getting to today that I think, that we know is going to be popular is a guy like Taysom Hill. Him and Huntley are coming at the same ownership. Taysom Hill to me is by far one of the better plays on the slate going against the defense in Atlanta. I love the spot for him. I expect him and Alvin Kamara, which we'll get to when we get to running back, to have fantastic days today, especially against a defense that's not really motivated to do anything, or anything really. And then one sneaky guy that I do love today that I think is really going overlooked, that is probably like my favorite GPP play, is Kirk Cousins. I really like getting to Kirk Cousins today, and I'm gonna going against Chicago. And it's in Minnesota, if I'm correct. So I think this is a game that no one's gonna look to, and he's in a dome. Like, why can't he go off with Justin Jefferson and go off for like like 35 fantasy points here in this spot and pass the ball all day to Dalvin Cook as well in Conklin. So, and KJ Osborne. So I love getting to that spot and having that be a sneaky milli maker GPP play.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite games as well too. And I'm not really sure how the ownership's going to shuffle that way. And I thought one thing that's interesting you mentioned that's worth noting in the slate this time of year, like there's some murky weather out there, but you talk about Minnesota at home in a dome versus the Bears. You talked like the Texans are at home versus the Titans. We don't really touch that game, but just another dome game. Green Bay versus Detroit, another dome game. There's a lot of dome games. New Orleans versus Atlanta. We'll talk about Hill later on. Hill versus the quarterback for Baltimore is just kind of a conundrum. I was kind of going back and forth, but Hundley's in murky weather and it's going to be wet apparently too. So I think that kind of breaks the tie. If you're considering a tie, of course, salary is a consideration as well. And the other part of that is continuing on. The Rams are in a dome versus the 49ers. We'll talk about that. And like, again, the biggest total on the board, Arizona and Seattle. It feels like we have, maybe six or seven dome games, like kind of that correctly. By the way, as far as incentives, Brady's receivers have incentives today. Mike Evans needs like 50 or 60 yards to get 1,000 yards for like the 8th straight season. He's never not had 1,000 yards. I don't think it's a financial thing, but it's kind of a cool thing, I suppose. I don't know what 1,000 yards is these days, or people value that. Once upon a time, that was a deal. And Gronk, of course, 500,000 for each one of these. He hits 7 receptions, 85 yards, 3 touchdowns. If he gets any of those, he gets 500K as well. Grant, some of the names that are thrown out there, anybody that kind of you want to follow up on, or just general thoughts as far as incentives and how this stuff matters, if you care about it, if it matters to you at all, and how some teams may be handling it. Like Marvin Jones, if he gets 4 catches, he gets a $500,000 bonus. I know Rex Burkhead has got like $125,000 bonus. There's a bunch of this kind of stuff out there. How much do you care about that? How much does it matter to you?
I mean, it kind of depends on the person. We've kind of seen Tom Brady try and specifically get people bonuses, and we've also seen Tom Brady specifically try and get tuned up for the playoffs, try and actually go all out and keep the momentum going into the playoffs. We saw it last year. We've seen that from him before, and we saw it with Antonio Brown last year, that Brady just wanted to give him the ball over and over again to give him that incentive. So I do have some interest in Gronk because of that, and I do have some interest in Tom Brady today. But overall, my player pool for quarterbacks is fairly concise. It's the guys that are playing for something. So Kyler, Hill, Stafford, and then the guys that are trying to prove something, or in Wilson's case, it could be his last game in Seattle. So I like Russell Wilson a lot. Davis Mills, he's, I think, still playing for this job, and they've shown a willingness to let him throw the ball 40, 50 times if they need to. The game script kind of puts them in a place to throw the ball a lot. Their team total scares me away a little bit, but I think it might be a little bit low. I mean, they're playing in a dome. We know who to pair him with. It's with Cooks. It's with Cooks every time. So that's kind of my player pool. It's pretty much Davis Mills, Tom Brady, Kyler, Taysom, Russ, Stafford. And that's pretty much it. I do. Someone asked a question about Dalton. I do think he is in play over on Super Draft, and that's
on DK as well.
I don't want to play him over on DK. He is in play, but I'm not playing him over there. I guess
he's got really cheap pairings. I don't want to play Dalton either, but he's got Allen Robinson's 4K there in DK, and he's one of the cheapies that work theoretically. Because again, I talked about it earlier. The cheapies stink; they're just not good. It's a tough cap today, and he's somebody I'm considering pairing. And of course, Cole Kmet is a cheap tight end too. It's not so much you love Dalton and Kmet and Robinson, but it's a cheap stack that it's what it can open up for you elsewhere. And again, I don't think this is going to be a high scoring slate as a general thought. We're not going to get those monster scores. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of my general thought here. Do you not agree with that, Grant? And I feel like the opportunity cost of quarterback is lower today than it normally is.
Yeah, I mean, it is probably not, actually. I mean, you have good plays. You have the top overall projected plays are Murray, clearly huge upside. Allen, clearly huge upside. Tannehill, clearly huge favorite. Hill, clearly huge rushing upside. Huntley, cheap and has some rushing upside. And Stafford, those are the guys that everyone's kind of going to. It's those 6, and we kind of have this almost every single week.
He's usually more than that, though. Like, he's usually more than those 5 or 6 guys.
Not really.
And Huntley's not the 5th or 6th guy you mentioned, typically.
Well,
he's not, but he's cheap, and he's actually been good recently. Like, his starts, he's put up a decent amount of points, put up 35 going up against the Packers.
Sure. Like, yeah, that happens.
He's throwing the ball a lot. He can get it done with his legs. He's rushing the ball 6 to 13 times every single start. Like, he's pretty much Jalen Hurts, but throwing the ball more.
That total is now at, doing a scroll here as far as, what are we looking at? The spread is 3.5. Why can't you give me both at the same time?
Total's
the
41.
41. Yeah, it's kind of tumbling. And again, looks like there's going to be really, really wet conditions for what it's worth. They're probably going to keep the ball on the ground, which I guess is good for Huntley, but also the defense knows this. They're going to stack, I presume they're going to stack the box a ton. Andre, your final thoughts as far as quarterback. We move on and talk about some running backs in a second.
Yeah, like that's another thing to concern. Like I like Huntley today. I liked him a lot more earlier in the week before the weather. And Pittsburgh's defense, like for what it's worth, they have been playing better and making it a little bit more healthier too. So that's another thing that concerns me when it comes to Huntley. And like I really just attack these dome situations, and because some of these guys are not going to be high owned, I think that's more important to go to today. And I think it's your best shot to win a lot of money. And honestly, today.
So you got Hill ahead of Huntley as far as the 2 running quarterbacks for that reason?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And also, like, even though we know Huntley's playing for something, but like we know Baltimore, they have no defense. Like they have no secondary, they're depleted. So to me, at that point, is what shot do they really have to get in the playoffs, even though they have like a very, very slim chance to make it?
2%.
Yeah. So like I think Pittsburgh wins the game outright, honestly, but I think that I don't know. I just feel like Taysom Hill is in a fantastic spot, and like I said, in the dome, it's just much better of a situation for sure.
How gross is Big Ben's last game going to be? Like in his arm and in those conditions, it's going to be so bad.
He might throw 60 times today.
Yeah.
For how many yards? 100?
Doesn't matter in PPR when you're talking about the wide receivers.
Yeah, well, 7% chance play. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, those teams are not officially eliminated. I think they need the Colts, amongst other things. They need the Colts to lose to the Jags.
I know it's a little off topic, but I kind of do like the Colts to lose today.
Wow. You're rooting for chaos, man.
Yeah.
That can open things up. That's it's always interesting. I'm curious. Why do you think that? Just because they're not like the Jags are just out of nowhere for no particular reason, the Jags are going to just win the game? Just
you know what's the more interesting one is Houston's going to beat the Titans.
That's going to be crazy too.
I can see that.
Wentz has not played well that well, in my opinion, in the last month. Jonathan Taylor's been obviously running the ball more effectively. We get that, but also like Jacksonville. I mean, the Colts have not won the game in Jacksonville since 2014.
By the way, speaking of sports gambling, Andre,
wow.
I presume you're excited about this because New York, you get the sports gamble right now. You can go ahead and jump on rotogrinders.com, jump on the Rotogrinders banner right at the top. You see sports betting, you go to New York, right? And you click through these links. I know Brit was having himself a good time yesterday. Andre, I'm not sure if you clicked through this just yet, but I'm super jealous right now that I'm not living in New York because the Caesars Sportsbook, they're offering you $300 free plus a $3,000 match. $1,000 risk-free bet for Fanduel, $1,000 deposit bonus for Draftkings, $250 bonus for Bet Rivers by clicking through these banners. I don't know if you've done it just yet, Andre, but I know Brit is super excited about it, and he was talking about clicking through. And but yeah, I mean, look, these are really, really good deposit bonuses. I guess Grant, you can speak to this too. You've had a lot in have you seen $3,000 match before? That seems like a big old number for Caesars.
I don't think I have seen that. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what it is, whether it's whatever it is, like whether it's free bets, whether it's just deposit bonus, whatever it is, it's fantastic. Like that, regardless of however they pay it out, it's a great deal. But
I don't know if it's a slow drip or not, but it doesn't matter, right? If you're going to be sports gambling, you're going to get it anyway eventually. But I wish I knew the details. All I know it's a $3,000 match. Maybe Andre, you can speak to that. I'm not sure.
I think it is a $3,000 match. I haven't done it yet. I really just took advantage of the $300 deposit bonus so far, and just been waiting for that to see how that plays out. I've been mainly dabbling with the FanDuel Sportsbook a lot more so far. And they have a lot of good promotions over there as well too.
$1,000 risk-free bet for FanDuel as well. Again, go to rotogrinders.com. Just go ahead and click the banner. I believe if you guys are watching us on the old YouTube, it's in the description of the video as well. You should be able to find it there. And what up, YouTube? We haven't said hello just yet. Hey, hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on the notifications. We're here till 1 o'clock. RG is taking you straight up the lock. And if you want to join the conversation, you want to ask us some questions. Why don't you talk about so-and-so? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Where is the chat? The chat is in our Discord channel, rotogrinders.com/Discord. We're in the live stream chat channel. That channel is free, does not cost you anything. It's not a premium channel. It's right next to Chiefs Prop Shop, which is also free. A lot of y'all lurking in there. A lot of y'all having a good time there. I saw apparently they won a bunch of money yesterday. At least according to a tweet, I saw Will had himself a good time on I think Thrive, I believe I want to say. Do want to mention also Yahoo. Yahoo once again giving away $200,000 off the top. I think it's 250 or 200,000 or 250. Oh yeah, $200,000 overlay, the $1 million baller. I have not reserved my spots just yet, and I'm concerned because it's starting to kind of sort of somewhat fill out. $1 million prize pool, $100,000 up top, flat payout. There's still, well, I guess 15,000 plus spots waiting to be claimed. But I have my script basically ready to go. But we assume there's gonna be some tinkering around 11:30. Just an absolutely phenomenal contest.
You can edit in CSV on Yahoo now.
I don't trust myself to do these things.
You don't know how to copy and paste?
I don't know, man. I need a tutorial. You got to give me like a PowerPoint presentation. Use the promo code Grinders25 for a free $25 bet on your first deposit. All right, Andre, running backs. But Jonathan Taylor could just like run the ball down Houston's throat in that O-line versus that D-line. Then that's something we could talk about. And let me just pick your brain on this one, Andre, because I'm curious. If you're going to start with one player, are you starting with Kupp or are you starting with Taylor? Because I have a thought on this.
See, because I personally, like, even though, like I said, I like Jacksonville to outright win, I'm gonna still start with Jonathan Taylor because I know everyone's I think is going to gravitate more towards Kupp, and I think it's still a tougher matchup. I think that Carson Wentz got to put the ball in there for him to win the game, which is not going to really happen. It's not going to matter how many yards Jonathan Taylor has on the ground. But he, to me, is the best running back on the slate. I think he, by far, will get 100 yards and get the bonus and probably score a touchdown or two. And yeah, I don't see only maybe I see like one other running back getting to where he can get to today, and having a monster game or two actually. That's really it in my opinion.
Dalvin Cook.
Not even Dalvin. I think Dalvin Cook's gonna have a decent game. I more so think like Alvin Kamara and Devin Singletary can get to the same amount of yardage and put up the same like a high fantasy score like Jonathan Taylor today. Dalvin Cook could do it anytime too as well, but I think this is a spot more like Kamara or Singletary today personally.
So my counter to that is I just think the running back pool is much better than the receiving pool. Therefore, the guys I have to step down to get if I'm not playing Taylor are better than the guys I have to step down to get if I'm not playing Kupp, which is why I like Kupp more than Taylor. But I think, like you said, as far as the ownership, we're looking at Kupp being at 21% and Taylor around 20% too. So it's ownership is kind of similar, right? Actually, Taylor's less, 16% on DK. But go ahead.
I will say it is definitely kind of similar. Like, and they're gonna have to put like San Francisco. I mean, they won the last game that they played them, and Kupp had like 11 catches, 13 targets. So I think that's fine, but I really just I don't know. I rather just get to like some of these running backs. I know they're in fantastic spots, but we've seen them let us down some time and time again. So I'd rather personally just pay up and take that guaranteed spot. I think there's a lot of the receivers today that can give you somewhat of an upside of what Kupp could get to, as we see like when we get there, like the guy from Detroit, St. Brown. I think is a fantastic play today as well. But
the St. Brown game, his brother's playing on the other side.
Yeah, so I think it's a perfect spot right there.
Back it up
and run it back. But yeah, so like a couple of the backs that I do like though today, like if James Conner does play, I think he's in a fantastic spot. I know people are also on Rashad Penny. I do kind of like Rashad Penny, but I'm not on him as much as as we were before. Oh, Foreman as well. Foreman is in the excellent spot against Houston. So to run off have a big game. I think that they're going to try. They're going to take that game seriously. Obviously, they need to win to get the secure number 1 seed. But Foreman today, I think, has a chance to really get the work. Like, well, he's going to get, I think, more work than he normally gets. To like, he getting 26 attempts. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets to 30 today, just because they want to secure that W and just make sure they run. So he could have like a 3 touchdown game, in my opinion, today, and be completely fine if necessary. I'm not as high on a guy like Eli Mitchell as everyone is. I know like the Rams are not a bad defense in my opinion at all, and I don't know. I'm trying to take stances here a little bit, and that's just a spot I really want to try to get different, and so I'm not going to be as high on him. Another spot that I do love though, getting to today. I mentioned Alvin Kamara briefly, but just to reiterate that a little bit more, it's just that he 6% ownership is too low of his ownership to go on with him. So I'm going to be like double, maybe triple the field on him for sure. But another spend-up option pretty much would be like Najee Harris going against Baltimore, who I love getting to today. He'll obviously run the ball, catch passes at the backfield for Ben Roethlisberger. So I think that's someone that we should try to use today as well.
You mentioned Foreman and you mentioned Mitchell, and they're kind of sort of the same player in that they got to get there by running the ball because they're not really going to catch it so much and getting in the box. And the difference between the two is that, Foreman's got that positive game script on layaway. They're 10-point favorites, and Mitchell's like, 3-4 point dog. And I don't, and he also can get his touchdown siphoned from like a receiver like Deebo Samuel. We're assuming Jimmy G's going to start, by the way, nothing official there just yet, but that seems to be the most likely scenario. Of course, if not, Lance would start there for San Fran. Jump in here, Grant, as far as, the running backs that you think are worth monitoring. I think Cook is, I think he's a full go. Zimmer is like a dead coach. Doesn't matter. He's going to play his guys, and that's that. They're going to play it like it's a real game. Connor, with the absence of the other back, who I'm losing his name for some reason, not playing this week. Kamara in the dome there against Atlanta. I like Montgomery as a run back in that Minnesota game, like we talked about the Chicago Minnesota game. Pretty appealing. Singletary has kind of separated himself in that Buffalo backfield. I'm a little, I don't know what to do with Antonio Gibson. I don't trust that projection. Do not trust it, but maybe we'll see. Samaje Perine, I don't, because he had so many injuries. It's a long season. He's had so many injuries. Like, why would they want to run him into the ground today? That doesn't. Why would they not?
You act like they have had anything to play for all season long. Just because it's the last week doesn't really mean, okay, now is the time. Let's not run him. Like, it's the last week of the season.
Yeah, well, why would you want to send him wounded into the offseason?
Because it's the offseason. He has time to heal.
He's been playing with pretty much almost a broken leg all year.
Yeah. I know, but that's and on the other side, you have Barkley, who's had a history of injuries. The Giants had -10 passing yards or something like that last week, and they were down like the 30, and they're still running the ball because they're too embarrassed. They just want to get out of town and just get it over with. And I think Barkley's a little bit more interesting. Like, him and Booker had like almost 40 touches combined, 40 carries combined. I don't know what to do with that game. Perine, I don't trust on Cincinnati being. I just think that's going to be kind of sort of a split. I hate that game as a general thought, so I'm probably not getting there. Chubb, I don't trust. Cleveland is a smart organization. They're not going to run Chubb into the ground, I don't think. But maybe he gets there like one big carry, sure. Jump in there, Grant. Some of the guys who touched on something you feel strongly about. We know the good players are, but who really stands out for you?
I have no real off the board running backs outside of Gibson and Stevenson, hoping that Harris for some reason will miss, but that's mostly going to be late swap stuff. Like, right now, I got a lot of Taylor, I got a lot of Connor, I got a decent amount of Foreman, got a lot of Singletary, and got a lot of Montgomery, and then sprinkle in Eli Mitchell and Rashad Penny just as kind of pivots off of those guys that are going to be a little bit more chalky. But like, this week, there's really not any off the board guys. Like, no one really like, you can't trust Dylan, obviously. Like, Patrick Taylor, 4K, like, maybe, I don't know, probably not. Chubb, they don't have anything to play for, and they have Ernest Johnson behind him. Like, Patterson, Davis has been stealing a lot. Sony, like, Cam Akers could end up with some plays, but in all likelihood, Sony's going to be the lead back, but he's going to be 20% owned. It's just
Well,
tough.
the thing with Sonny Michel, not to cut you off, but like he's getting basically every single touch. So even if Akers comes in and takes like 5 touches or like 15% of the snaps, that's losing something. Touch on the Tampa Bay side because they're 25. Okay, I don't know what to do with this one. I don't have a good take on it. Like Keyshawn Vaughn, Le'Veon Bell, like Barner's lurking, but why do you like Bell over Vaughn? I don't know.
I mean, the share is going to be split pretty evenly. Bell has more receiving upside. We saw what Brady did with Fournette in the offense. Dumped the ball off to him a lot. He can pass per protect. So, like, Vaughn is not really the most fundamentally sound running back. While he is a good runner, like, he's not really Brady's type of running back. And the split's going to be close to 50-50. Just the fact that Vaughn's 21% projected owned and Bell's like 5, the obvious choice is Bell.
Andre, you got somebody off the board, and again, stuff might change. Like Grant kind of alluded to, there's a chance Damian Harris doesn't go. If he doesn't go, Ramondre Stevenson becomes a really, really good play later on. And then, that's a 4:00 game, which is kind of weird for a Miami game, which is how it's going down. I think I don't know what to do with Detroit, but like theoretically against Green Bay's backups, theoretically, like Swift or Jamal Williams' revenge game could be kind of sort of something interesting, but who the hell knows how much they're going to let Swift go. Again, same kind of deal that they said, we're going to give Swift a bunch of carries last week. And they didn't. They said they're going to rest him this week. It doesn't appear that's what they're doing, but maybe they will. I don't know. Yeah. Andre, anybody off the board, any situation you're kind of monitoring, if it could become interesting if news kind of falls that way?
Jamal Williams is like the one guy that I do have kind of. Right now he's not my player pool, but I'm trying to monitor this, like find out any news that I can, because that's the one guy I would have interest in more so than anyone. As far as off the board, that's low owned because, like I said, it's against his former team. I can see him having a game here. Why not? Just for it. And send the season off the way he wants to. So Swift, I don't think he's going to really get much run. Like last week, I was so mad. I played like a lot of.
Yep.
And he did not play.
Coach lied to you, man.
Oh yeah, so I'm not playing that game no more. I'm just going to not play him at all and take my chances. I do love the Stevenson call. I think he's honestly kind of in play regardless. I think
sure.
Regardless of where the Harris is. Because knowing Bill Belichick, he definitely will take out his starters if he gets hurt. And that's so I can see Stevenson, if they get up to a nice, decent lead, them just giving Stevenson the ball in the second half of the game and just running the clock out. So I like Stevenson regardless today. That's a pivot off of some of these other guys.
All right. Anything else of note? Anything else that we should kind of mention before we sort of move on? I'll throw Burkhead in the conversation, especially on Fanduel. He's like 5-ish over there, and I made a. What's that?
I think isn't David Johnson back?
I mean, I guess, but like I think Burkhead's still going to get a decent amount. Look, I'm not excited about it. If you can hear my voice, I'm not happy about it. But I think he's fine. But like, yeah, I don't know. We're expecting Johnson to be back. You're right.
Yeah, but I mean, like that is not a bad play though, because over the last 3 weeks he has been getting more of the workload compared to David Johnson. So that could be actually a sneaky good play.
I'm pulling it up now. I think wasn't Johnson there last week? No, he wasn't. My bad.
Week 15, the snaps were 63% to 21%.
Yeah, Freeman had 22% of snaps last week, so maybe Johnson just takes Freeman stuff. I don't know. That's my enthusiasm is limited, but he's currently in a lineup. Receivers, we touched on Cooper Kupp. Like, what's to say? He's an awesome play if you can play him. If you can make it work salary wise, it's not hindering the rest of your lineup so much. By all means, go for it. Grant, give me the rundown as far as the receivers that have your eye. The pivots away from Kupp as far as the big spends. Like, of course. Like Jefferson seems really interesting in that game.
He's not even really
Metcalf,
a pivot. He's going to be just as heavily played.
Not necessarily. I don't think that's the case.
And we have him projected for 17.3, Kupp for 21.1.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's less, but fair enough.
Basically the same.
Okay. Some receivers you like.
I really like Lockett. Like everyone seems to be going I mean, my guess is everyone's going to go with Metcalf. Even though we haven't projected for less, I don't know why. Like, I guess it's different for different sites. I know that Metcalf is projected to be very heavily owned over on Yahoo, and Lockett is not, because he's slightly more expensive. But I'm going to be playing both of them a decent amount. I'm playing a lot of Russ, and of course I'm just stacking Russ with one wide receiver, as I always seem to do. But yeah, like outside of that, it's a little bit tough. Like, the real guy that I think is going far too overlooked today is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, this guy has been unreal the last, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Doesn't matter who's throwing to him. He's getting 10 targets every week. He has big touchdown upside. He has 100-yard upside. Packers are probably going to be resting some of their defensive players too. Like, it's not like it's that tough of a matchup, all things considered. It's being played in a dome. Like, Amon-Ra St. Brown is by far my favorite play on this slate.
I like him too. And his brother's kind of sort of somewhat in play. He's 3K on DK, depending on the news.
You doing any Brown stacks?
You got to stack them up. You got to have at least one lineup where you're playing them both. I think I'm going to do that. And again, I want to see the news and all that, but I think St. Brown's going to get some run for Green Bay, and we'll see. Like, I'm not playing Adams, if that's what you're asking me. Like, which, by the way, if this game mattered, Adams would be like an incredible play.
Yeah,
it'd be amazing. But unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at. Jefferson's needs 124 receiving yards for a single season Viking franchise record. I believe there's another one. I wanted to find the why can't I pull it up? There's a Diggs one where Diggs, I think it's a reception thing for him, I want to say. Yeah, so if he gets 6 receptions, he makes 1.55 million. I think they get Diggs at 6 catches. Or at least Allen does his best to make that happen. Jump in there, Andre. Are you playing guys like Jamar Chase? He's another guy who has a slight incentive, like 45 receiving yards for single season rookie record. But I think if he plays, once he gets 45, or that's it. He's gone. Like, I can't imagine they play him much longer than that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not playing Jamar today. I just don't think they're gonna take that risk. Like you said, give him this 45 yards real quick and get out. Like, get out the game, just go sit on the sideline, enjoy it. A couple 15-yard hits just will do that for him, or 15-yard out. So I'd rather get to the guys like he was talking, like Grant mentioned before. Amon St. Brown was my favorite tournament play of the day as well. Just the upside that he has, presents he's quarterback proof. I mentioned that last week, so it means he's just someone I really love getting to today. I'd like getting to another guy that's low owned, that's going overlooked, that I personally always forget to play when I play with Arizona, is Anton Wesley, the third receiver. He seems to be becoming a very important receiver for them with Hopkins out, but him getting the targets and the trust from Kyler has been big. So and seeing, like, from watching the games and him getting like a lot of targets, probably I think 5 or more targets in the last 2 or 3 games. That's enough for me to want to play him a little bit more and see where it goes, and hopefully maybe have a pretty decent or good game for his price point, and also to get different from all the other guys in this range too. I also don't mind. I think Marvin Jones has an incentive too.
4 catches.
4 catches, right? Yeah. So he's someone I definitely running a little bit of today for sure. And Mark, I really do like Marquise Callaway as well. I know we have Deontay Harris coming back, but my New Orleans Saints need to win to put the pressure on the 49ers to get in. So I think that Marquise is a fantastic play, because we've seen him building a rapport with Taysom Hill. So I'll look for him to probably go big today and catch a couple nice passes down the field. And a sneaky play that I know that he's not getting a lot of ownership, that I really do like as a spend up option, is Deontay Johnson. Like, I'm not kidding when I said Ben Roethlisberger might throw the ball 60 times because it's his last game. So I love getting to Deontay Johnson today for that specific reason. He can have 15, 16 catches, short catches, and just take it all to the house, especially with this secondary being depleted, not being all that great. And KJ Osborne's another one I like as part of your Kirk Cousins stacks to running back with.
Grant, give me your favorite cheapies. This is wild. I just went to the Life HQ, the DK specific, and I wanted to sort it by point per dollar, right? And point per dollar, you're usually going to find really, really cheap plays, right? And that's the best point per dollar receiver on DK specific is Allen Robinson, who's like been a complete disaster this year. But he is in a dome, and like theoretically, he's in a pretty good spot, and like he's got an upgraded quarterback for what you need him to do. I don't, whatever, you know what I mean. The second guy is wild. It's Cooper Kupp. Like he's the most expensive receiver, and he's the second best point per dollar guy too. DJ Moore is another one. Then DK Metcalf is fourth. Christian Kirk is fifth, and then St. Brown, Equiminius St. Brown, the other St. Brown. All the Browns play AJ Brown too. Get the Brown stack. All three of those guys. Is there a running back named Brown? Is Ronald Brown still playing? Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's not playing. There was an incident last week. I don't think he's playing this week. Grant, your thoughts?
You can play Marquise Brown. You can play Pharaoh Brown.
Oh yeah,
Amari Brown, AJ Brown.
Yeah, I mentioned him. Yeah, stack him up. All right. What do you have for me, Greg? Give me somebody where I can make stuff work. Give me a salary saver you like.
I do not like any salary saver.
Well, that's the problem because we have a normal salary cap. How are we going to make this stuff work?
I don't know. Super draft.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be done over there for the season, and then they brought me right back in because I'm like, I don't like any of these lineups.
Yeah.
I want to play more Cooper Kupp.
Yahoo's kind of a little bit tough this week too. Like building Yahoo lineups, it's not easy. Like I don't know who Juwan Winfrey is, but apparently he's a guy for Green Bay that could be interesting. But I don't know. I want to get more information on Green Bay.
On Yahoo, you can play Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore.
I think Robbie Anderson might not play. He's been like kind of dinged all week, and I don't know if they're going to run him out there, to be honest. So again, that's stuff we don't know yet. But he's interesting. Yeah, he is. He's interesting if he plays.
Play wherever you want.
Thank you, Devin. All over it. I can't play wherever I want because there's a salary restriction. Marvin Jones, again, I'm playing some Marvin Jones and A-Rob on DK, and I hate myself for that. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. What are you gonna do?
What about Grayson? You play Grayson from Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he seems to be the guy they trust there. You mentioned the tall guy for Arizona, Wesley. It's like 6'5" or so. Sure, I guess he works with my stacks for Kyler. Let's talk about tight end. That's kind of a spot we save money, right, Grant? Like theoretically, if you have money, of course, like Kittle is an awesome play. Andrews is a phenomenal play. Like nobody's going to pay up that salary for him. We're probably going to be saving salary here at tight end, especially in the caps on the sites that have the tighter cap, like the Cole McComets and the John Bates and the Gerald Everetts of the world and Tyler Higbees. The best guy in the middle probably is Zach Ertz. He's kind of been turned like the de facto number one target there for Arizona. We got to be efficient here, Grant, because we have some questions on layaway, but your thoughts as far as tight ends?
I mean, Cole Kmet, Everett, Conklin, if you want to go cheap. I like playing Kittle and Andrews. The one that doesn't seem like it's going to be played nearly enough is Higbee. Like the guy can have big games. He hasn't had a touchdown in a while. He's still putting up 12, 9 points in the last 3 games. So it's a pivot off of Kupp a little bit. Pivot off Michelle, like maybe he sneaks a touchdown or 2. And then Gronk, it's one of the few incentive biases that I am really looking into. And I think Gronk ends up with a pretty big game.
Yeah, that's 6% projection on DK. Even if that's low, even if it's like 9 or 10 or whatever, but he's really, really interesting. Again, it all speaks to how tight the cap is, and this stuff could change if something clearly opens up that kind of opens up the world to us. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Andre, your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much like the same same set of tight ends. There's not really much. My tight end pool is very small today. Brevin Jordan, I don't know if no one mentioned that. I think he's decent option at tight end to go to run it back if you're running someone from Tennessee today. And I'll do into Mark Andrews, which is the highest spending tight end I know we have on the slate. Just because I know Huntley's going to pepper him with targets. Huntley's favorite receiver. So I like that today, but definitely my favorite is going to probably be Zach Ertz and Gronk today. Try to get to as much of them as I possibly can. And also George Kittle. He's coming at low ownership too as well. Shanahan's going to find a way to get him the ball. And And what's the receiver's name?
Samuel?
Yes, Samuel's. Yeah, Debo Samuel. They're going to find a way to get them a ball today. So preparing for some trick plays and for Kittle to have probably maybe a monster game today. I think he did have a pretty good game against them the last time they played too. Yeah, 16 fantasy points. Yep.
Assuming Jimmy G's thumb is fine, I think it's definitely an upgrade to have Kittle in there instead of Lance. Lance more likely to run the ball. Kittle probably more likely to block if Lance is in there as well. So I think that's an upgrade for sure. And again, it's also like there's no tomorrow. If San Fran's got to win, this is the game they have to have. So I like Kittle as well. I think he's best on FanDuel, or I want to say he's 6'9" over there. I think that's the best price we've seen him at. All right, some questions we have pulled from the chat, the Discord channel. All right, Carolina guy, this is for you, Grant. FanDuel tournament's favorite large field play. Give me try to be a little ambitious here. This is for a large field, it's not for a single entry or 3-entry max, that kind of thing. Give me your favorite large field play on FanDuel.
St. Brown.
You got to, which you want to be more specific?
Amon-Ra. He's coming in like low single digits.
Well, because there's like a sticker shock on him, but like it's fully justified. He's been
yeah,
awesome.
he's been literally outside of Cup. Probably he might be the highest scoring wide receiver of the last 5 weeks.
Yep.
No, he's been really, really good, and I'm okay paying that price. If I'm happy to find that salary. This is for from D Montgomery. This is for Andre specifically. Would you pair Cook and a Minnesota stack with Cousins?
Yeah.
Are you okay doing that?
Yeah, definitely.
Also, Andre, he wants to know if you like Stafford.
Oh yeah, I love Matthew Stafford today, but I'm gonna look at the game a little bit more in depth. But I just know that 49ers tend to have a McVay's number a little bit. Kind of concerned.
What about this kind of ties into Slambert's question? Thoughts on OBJ? OBJ seems like a pretty clear pivot away from Cup as well, and I'm good with that in tournaments.
He's had a touchdown like every game this season almost since he's been with the Rams. So yeah, play him.
Grant, you happen to have a favorite prop bet on off the top of your head?
Amon-Ra St. Brown to score a touchdown.
Fair enough. Andre, am I crazy? This is Lip asking. FanDuel tournaments. Am I crazy if you're playing Wentz today? What about Andy Dalton? I would say Andy Dalton's kind of crazy in FanDuel, but not as crazy in DK. What do you think? Is it crazy to consider Wentz today?
It's not crazy if you think they're going to win, but I personally don't think they're going to win, so I'm not doing it.
Andre, I don't think we got your thoughts as far as the Tampa Bay situation. For tournaments, what do you think of Vaughn, the running back situation in Tampa? Do you have a read on that, or are you as clueless as I am?
It's kind of hard. Like, I like Grant's call with saying going with some Le'Veon Bell. I was trying to actually look at the Grinders IQ to see the splits between the two from when Mitch McCall went off the game, which is still kind of, and they pretty much got a 34-30 split, which Bell had the more carries. So I kind of am now thinking, should I get on Bell a little bit more, just because of that because you never know. But they were also down a little bit too, which is the reason why I think Bell was in there more. So I guess it depends on the game script that you're gonna say and go with.
Question is Watt back for the Cardinals? I believe he is. I think I saw him tweeting about it. Yeah. Oh, so he's not playing this week. Oh, it's for next week for the playoffs.
Yeah, for the playoffs.
My bad. Okay. Yeah, I knew he was coming back, and I guess fair enough. Grant, give me your favorite stack. Give me your favorite something. Give me something non-Brown related though. Anything else? Give me anything else for the people. Something you're looking at today.
Eli Mitchell goes for the 150 yards.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna lose them.
I'm losing too. I really hope that's not true. Andre, same question.
I think Kirk Cousins puts up in the Millie Maker today.
Yeah, I don't hate him either. Nothing to play for. A coach that's a dead coach, so he's going to play his guys and whatever. All right. We do appreciate y'all watching us all season long. Of course, don't go anywhere. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications and all that. But coming up right behind us, Erik and Ben, they're going to give you guys the actives and inactives. They're going to Galaxy Brain. This is an awesome Galaxy Brain slate. So they're going to have a good conversation for sure. Playoff content. We're for sure going to have playoff content. I can tell you that myself, the Pick Six crew, we're going to have our Wednesday night video out for the first two weeks of the playoffs. Rich Rebar and John Daigle, two of the best in business. Stay tuned for that. With that said, it's been fun this year, all 18 weeks. Thank you to Grant. Thank you to Devin producing. Thanks to Andre. Thanks for watching. Again, no reason to go anywhere. We got Ben and Erik following us. We got to step aside and get out of here. We'll see you later. We'll see you next week. Good luck today. Win some money. We're out of here. Holler.
Back in the Fantasy Bar for the first time ever, talking week 18 here on Yahoo with 6 of my favorite plays, including a couple of my favorite value plays, some of my favorite correlations, what games are we targeting, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 18 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Thank you once again for stopping by the Fantasy Bar and checking out the video. Now, before we get into the plays on Yahoo for Week 18, couple things. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button on YouTube. Helps us out tremendously, so thank you for that. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, get notified when these videos are coming out. Got this video, Draftkings, Fanduel, 6 more plays I'm liking, a sports betting video as well with 2 of my favorite NFL plays each and every week, and of course, NBA videos. Don't want you to miss any of that content. Also, make sure you're taking advantage. Special offer on Yahoo. Right below me. The link is down there. Go take advantage. Giving away free money once again on Yahoo in their $1 Million Baller contest. And scoresandodds.com/beer also down there. Another link for you to check out for all of your sports betting needs. All right, let's get into plays here for Week 18 on Yahoo. Let's start at the wide receiver position. Now we're buying at a discount. Wide receiver DJ Moore, just $15. Now, I know DJ Moore not been great here. This offense has certainly struggled, but I don't think a lot of people are going to go to the well here in this spot. And we know it's a very plus matchup here for DJ Moore in this passing game. Tampa Bay, the weakness of that defense is the secondary. Carolina, likely playing from behind here, throwing more than they normally would. And we're getting him at a discount. We've seen this $15 price point one other time a couple weeks ago, but it's the lowest price we've seen all season long on him over on Yahoo. And consistency, at least in the target department, we can bank 7 or more targets. He's done it in every single game this season, 10 or more in 4 of the last 5. I think DJ Moore ends the season here with a high note. So make sure we're buying low here on Yahoo at just $15. All right, let's stay at that same $15 price point at the running back position with Samaje Perine of the Bengals. Now we know since he's going to be resting some players, Joe Mixon landed on the COVID list. So Samaje Perine, next man up here for Cincinnati. And anytime this guy's gotten the opportunity, he's certainly produced. Now this season, very limited sample, but 2 games on the board where he's gotten double-digit carries. He's averaged over 15 Yahoo points a game in those scenarios. So 15 points at $15, I'll take that any day of the week. And it's just tough to find a guy that has the potential to touch the ball 15, 20, upwards of 25 times at these price points. Take advantage here. In a matchup that's okay, Cleveland middle of the pack against the running back position. Point is, Samaje Perine going to get a ton of touches. Just too cheap here at $15. All right, to the quarterback position next. Guy we know has a ton of upside. That's Tyler Huntley of the Ravens. So Lamar Jackson, no practice on Thursday as of this recording. Not looking likely to play here this week. Anything changes, of course, we will make some adjustments in the comment section, but I'm expecting to see Tyler Huntley at quarterback once again here for the Baltimore Ravens, and rushing has been there for him as we'd expect. 40 or more rushing yards now in each of the last 4 games, and Pittsburgh has had issues with that. They've allowed the 9th most rushing yards to the quarterback position here. So again, the matchup not ideal, but Huntley cheap at $27. Some nice pairing partners here, and that rushing ability always gives us a nice floor ceiling combination. Tyler Huntley looking in a good spot here this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, we like Huntley, his go-to guy. That's right, we're going to tight end. Mark Andrews, $30. So normally don't like spending this much money at the tight end position, but it's an ugly spot this week. And we know Tyler Huntley and Mark Andrews have had one hell of a connection here over the last couple weeks. Let's dive into some of the numbers here. Over the last 4 games, Mark Andrews, 4 touchdowns over that stretch, and is averaging 22 Yahoo points a game. So if I'm getting that kind of production in a very tough tight end position, I'm going to lock that in and look to save money elsewhere this week. Both of these teams, Pittsburgh and Baltimore, very much alive for the playoffs. Now, very much slim chances for both of these teams. The point is this game should still be competitive. Two rivals here. You got Ben Roethlisberger's likely last game in the NFL. I'm expecting Baltimore to come out, put a spirited effort on the board, but Mark Andrews been too good for us to ignore. Don't worry about it. We'll save you money in other spots. Let's pay the price here on Mark Andrews at $30. All right, speaking of saving money, we're going to also correlate here with our Baltimore stack. We're going to the other side at wide receiver with Ray McLeod, just $10. Now, Deontay Johnson hit the COVID list today, so likely not going to play in this game. So that's going to mean a lot of people going to be looking at Chase Claypool, which I'm fine with. Pat Fryermuth, even Washington, going to get some looks here. But let's not forget about Ray McLeod. Again, minimum price stands out. So we're saving some money, eating into some of that Mark Andrews salary. The targets been impressive here for McLeod. 8 or more targets now in 3 of the last 4 games. In Baltimore, struggles against wide receivers. We've seen it week in, week out. 4th most fantasy points to this position. So if Claypool stays in his position, Washington enters the lineup. Who's the guy that likely fills the shoes of Deontay Johnson or tries? Not calling him Deontay Johnson. It's going to be Ray McLeod. So minimum price here, too tough to me to pass up in this matchup with this awful Baltimore secondary. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for Week 18 on Yahoo. Before we do that, we want to continue our Beasts of the Week contest. Free to play, easy to play, and a thank you to you guys. All you got to do, get in the comment section right below the video and get fantasy points on Yahoo for my favorite play of the week. The closest guess going to win themselves a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. So let's get to it. Let's wrap this baby up. My favorite play for Week 18. You know I'm as the Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. We owe you one more running back. We're going to spend up once again with Alvin Kamara of the Saints, $30. This week's Beast of the Week. So the Saints, a huge game here against the Atlanta Falcons. They need a win. They need San Francisco to lose. Still alive for a playoff spot in the NFC, and I'm expecting this Saints team to play at a very high level. I'm also expecting this team to fix what's been ailing them. Their best playmaker is not getting the ball enough, and I think you're going to start to see Alvin Kamara get the ball a ton here. And it might be too little too late here for the Saints. The point is, I think you're going to get a healthy dose here of Alvin Kamara, but it's not just that. It's also the matchup here. We look at Atlanta. They've really struggled defensively against all the major positions, but against running back, we're talking about a team that's bottom 10 in rushing touchdowns allowed, receptions allowed, which we know is a big part of his game, even with Taysom Hill in there, and most importantly, fantasy points allowed to this position. Alvin Kamara in a great spot here, a must-win spot for the New Orleans Saints. I think they lean on their horse here, making Alvin Kamara easily my favorite play on the board in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that wraps up here for Week 18 on Yahoo. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, hit me up in the comment section right below the video. Don't forget, fantasy points on Yahoo for Alvin Kamara for your shot at a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. Special offer on Yahoo right below me. Link in the description. Also, scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. For Rotogrinders.
What is going on, guys, and welcome to the first ever Week 18, I guess the first ever Week 18 of all time, definitely the first ever Week 18 final Rotogrinder show, almost leading you up to lock in the last one of this 2021-2022 regular season. I am, as always, your co-host, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Beimfohr, joined by Ben Gretch at Gretch on Twitter, and the author of the Stealing Signals newsletter, which is done for the season, but I almost wish it wasn't, Ben, because you're supposed to be the one that's telling me which of all these guys, you know, these practice squad guys or these XFL players or whatever that are I'm seeing, you know, in lineup HQ with projections, right? Juwan Winfrey and these guys, Cyril Grayson and all that showing up in these projections. And I need somebody to tell me which of these guys to play. How are you feeling coming in? Do you feel super confident? Do you feel like you have absolutely no idea? Or what's your kind of overall take of this final, crazy last week slate?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. I mean, I think you look at Saturday as a really good example. I mean, that's sort of the way that I would was thinking about it all week, and Saturday I think was really unpredictable in the sense of like you have the Kansas City game first of all, which was fairly normal, but even the way they handled Tyreek, I think was very clearly related to them being pretty locked in. He had the little heel issue, and they were just like, can you give it a go or not? They were telling the sideline reporter that it's not an actual injury, but then when he's out in the field, like he was looking like it was really bad, but if that was a game they needed to win, like he was going full speed. And then you wind up as a direct result with like maybe the clearest like wide receiver handcuff we've ever seen. Mecole Hardman has a 10 target, 8 catch, 100-yard game. And then the Dallas Philly game is an even better example where you had two teams, questionable motivation, can't really move around a ton. The Eagles decide they're going to rest everyone. And the Cowboys, even though they didn't bring several players like Tony Pollard, a couple others on the trip, and they had some, COVID issues of their own, which the Eagles did as well this week, they decided to go all out. Dak throws 5 touchdowns. It's like, one of the things we're talking about just before the show is like, it's really easy to lock into like who needs to win, who has motivation. And one of the ways we do that is like, who has the widest range of potential outcomes? Can they finish anywhere from second to 7th or whatever? Some of the teams have that type of thing. Like the Bills and Patriots, we know, have both really wide ranges this week. The Cowboys were a team that are like locked into the 4, slim shot to move up to the 3, slim shot to move up to the 2, very slim shot. But they were like, we're going to go after records kind of as well. I mean, that's the other side of it. We know about incentives, records. Dak goes after the team record and throws 5 touchdowns and sets the new Dallas pass TD record. We don't know how any of these teams are going to approach it. Is sort of the point I'm getting at. It seemed like Dallas had limited incentive to really push, but they clearly didn't care. I mean, they went for it. They put up a 50 burger. So I think you can get into trouble speculating on that stuff. So the biggest thing, I mean, when we talk about it every single week, feels like a cop out almost at this point. But the biggest thing for me is like, I don't want to play chalky plays. I know there's going to be big weeks in the final year of the season. There's always big ones in the final year. There's no next week. Sometimes it's a young guy. Sometimes it's vets that the coaches like. They let guys run. They turn them loose. But we don't necessarily know exactly where those spots are going to be ahead of time. So the worst thing I want to do is really like build like everyone else is building, lock in the Cooper Kupp chalk, lock in all this chalk and build this lineup that looks the same as everyone else's, because there is going to be ceilings like the Dak one that to me was unexpected yesterday. We're going to see some of that today.
I totally agree. And I was, if anybody watched the show I did here on Rotogrinders with SDL Cards, where we talked about the slate yesterday, the 2-game Saturday slate. And it's one of those just, uncomfortable like things to talk through, especially on a 2-game slate, right? You're like, how much do we think Noah Brown is going to play, but kind of how I framed it is basically what you just said. We come into because we're trying to make as informed decisions as possible on these slates. You go to Twitter, right? Everybody's got, shout out Anthony Amico did an awesome incentives thread, right? So we know the incentives for all of these players. We know we probably know the fantasy football sickos probably know the exact scenarios for each NFL team's playoff shots, maybe better than some of these teams actually do. And I know that sounds absurd, but have you listened to a Matt Nagy press conference or a Joe Judge press conference? I'm not so certain that these guys even care as much about some of this stuff as we do, right? And rest and all that kind of thing. So we inject how we view the situation. And like you said, the range of outcomes and the certainty of all this. And then we say, okay, well, this is what I would do, right? We're like if I was running the Bucks, I probably wouldn't drop Tom Brady back to pass 45 times today because it doesn't really matter. Like, don't get him injured. But we're not the ones making the decision. We're not head coaches of NFL teams. We're not, we are trying to assess the situations as best as we can. But that's, as you talked about yesterday with Dallas, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes on these NFL teams, right? That they have very different perspectives on all of this than we do. And so I think, computers don't know the weather. Whether if anybody missed the Dean Pease interview, that was turned into a pretty good meme. But producer Devin posted a quote: "Computers don't know the weather," but that's like a synopsis of these football coaches take things a little bit differently, than we do. And so because of all that, there's even more uncertainty on this slate, right, than a normal DFS slate, which already has like infinite levels. We're trying to just determine how much players are going to play. That's not even like just being on the field doesn't accumulate fantasy points, right? And so that plays into exactly what you said in terms of like, I don't want to just go down this week with like all the chalky plays that everybody else is jamming in. I would like to take on a little bit more variance. And sometimes I actually think you're probably not even taking on more variance. You're just deviating a little bit from the crowd to situations that maybe project just a little bit worse or have a little bit more uncertainty or just are a little bit more uncomfortable, right? And so we're definitely going to get a lot of inactive stuff. Devin is doing an awesome job. They're going to be very important today. He's posting all of the relevant inactives and probably some actives here and there in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube and you're looking in the chat and nobody's posting anything and Devin's not posting inactives, we are over in Discord. You can join the free RG Discord at rotogrinders.com/Discord. We're hanging out in the live stream chat channel. So hop in there if you want to get in the chat and see all the inactives, all that good stuff. So we kind of outlined a little bit of how I think both of us are definitely in alignment on, general like tournament approach and the kind of the chaos of this slate. If I were to kind of start, let's focus on DraftKings at first. If I were to kind of start on this slate, it's that there actually isn't as much value and like some of these, quote unquote week 18, former week 17 guys that we used to have. You used to get the people have joked about the Duke Williams, Robert Foster, Roger Lewis, all this different stuff. That's not as much there today. Like if you look at all the best projections, it's not some random backup receiver. Allen Robinson, oddly enough, is $4,000 on DraftKings in one of the better projections. It's guys like that. And it's actually guys in, games that matter a little bit more. And so we're also seeing chalk on, the expensive Cooper Kupps and Jonathan Taylors and stuff of the world. But I kind of tend to be looking a little bit more to this mid-range. And it's actually like not week 18 type guys. It's a lot of your DJ Moores and we're the same names we mention every single week. How are you kind of looking at it the same way, in terms of this weird non-bar, you were used to barbell on this slate, and I'm not so sure that that's the case.
Yeah, and I think people are going to gravitate towards that. Like the different ownership projections I've seen, like a lot of the high priced players certainly look like they're going to be played at a high rate. I think people are going to immediately try to jam in Kupp, Taylor, the high priced pieces at various positions, and then try to find value that I agree with you. It's not really as clearly there. I mean, you mentioned some of the like receivers, like we've had the Rex Burkhead week and some of that. We probably will have some no names have some big weeks this week. I really do think that that's possible. I mean, one of the things that I'm going to be doing is sticking, and we talk about this every week, but sticking to like smaller field stuff where, the ones that nobody's on aren't going to necessarily bury me. But it is a tougher one to find very clear spots for those low guys. And so, the obvious pivot, like you said, is kind of just play in the middle range. You mentioned like the Bucks, for example. They're a great example. They have a ton of incentives that they could potentially be trying to hit. We might be putting too much weight on that. It's not really clear. But I do think like Brady's going to try, like this is sort of a tune-up game for them as well. They almost lost to the Jets last week. They had the Antonio Brown meltdown. So there's that element too, where like motivation can be based on their playoff seeding. It can also be based on what they're doing inside the building. They've had a really tumultuous couple weeks. They lose Godwin. Antonio Brown quits in the middle of the game last week. There's reasons I think that they could be looking at things internally and being like, we want to go out there and put up a big game. And even if it's a big half, right? But I think they're going to come out essentially going after these incentives and or just trying to get like tuned up for the play. Like legitimately, maybe we overuse the idea of like a tune-up game, but like legitimately a tune-up game in the sense that like Brady wants to show that he can throw to Evans and Gronk. Because he is going to be thinner going into the playoffs in terms of his weapons. I think this is a spot where we'll see them really try to show that off a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those. yeah, it's just I agree with you broadly about the mid-range stuff. I'm looking at some of those guys, even at the high price points. I mean, I'm looking at, you kind of pick and choose, but like I'm looking at Diggs. Diggs needs per Anthony Amico, you mentioned he needs 6 receptions to earn a $1.5 million escalator on his base salary for next year. He needs 231 yards to get a similar one on the yardage side. Probably not going to get there on yards, but I feel pretty confident he's going to get those 6 receptions. This is a must-win game, and it feels like a spot where they would, we've seen Diggs get peppered and get the volume, and we talked for a long time about like a ceiling game could be coming. It hasn't ever actually really come this year. But another guy who like the Bills, or another spot where like the Bills might be viewing it as like, we want to get Diggs sort of tuned up for the playoffs, show that he's still this legit number one, even though he never had that huge week. I still think he has like a massive ceiling, as big of a weekly ceiling as almost anyone. It would not surprise me if Diggs had a 200-yard game this week, if they decide that they're going to go after some of these milestones.
Yeah, I love both of those examples because they're kind of the thing that I'm latching onto this week. Like we talked about, I really do believe, like, now if you play Stephon Diggs and you want to play Josh Allen with him, by all means, but just broadly, like we were talking about, pivoting off what we're looking at as some of the highest owned players, whether it be kind of like what I was saying, where just moving my roster construction around a little bit, or like you said, direct price point pivots. Those are available to us. Like all those different ways to kind of get unique in tournaments are available to us. And you mentioned, kind of outlined maybe 2 of the better ones, 2 of my, or at least 2 of my, kind of favorites, and the Bucks like across the board, really, honestly. Whether it be Brady as a pivot off of the Allen and Kyler ownership at the top of quarterback, or Mike Evans as a wide receiver pivot off of kind of the guys around his range. The Grayson stuff as a cheap. I kind of actually like the cheap, like Grayson stuff, but I want to see where his ownership fits in. But if he's a pivot right off of some cheaper guys, Gronk at tight end, no one feels comfortable playing Keyshawn Vaughn at running back, right? Basically every Bucs skill player is a pivot, because no one really feels that comfortable, whether it be there's uncertainty because we don't know these guys' roles really. Like, is Mike Evans really going to now dominate targets? I don't know. Maybe, are they going to push Gronk in a quote unquote meaningless game? But I tend to agree with you that particularly when the market is like off the Bucs, right? Now we get in a game where they need to, like, this is their team if they're going to go try to win a Super Bowl. And like Cyril Grayson's played like 50 snaps with Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Tyler Johnson has to figure out how to play a bigger role. Keyshawn Vaughn, they're assuming Leonard Fournette is back next week, but that's not a guarantee. Keyshawn Vaughn has to get snaps here, right? And Tom has to get comfortable with all these guys. And so that's the kind of thing where the market is just like, oh, this is, they don't need to win or whatever. However, there's a reason to believe that that's not true. So I would like to get away from the market. And then Stephon Diggs is the same thing. We're all about incentives. We're all about all that stuff in this week. And yet Stephon Diggs has like as much incentive as anybody on the planet. $1.5 million for 6 catches. Like, so you're telling me I'm going to get a guaranteed like 10 points from this dude. And he's like a third of the ownership of Cooper Kupp. He's cheaper, whatever. And like, I feel fairly confident Josh Allen, they're like boys, right? They've done some interviews and all this, like he's going to get Stephon Diggs his 6 catches. Will he win a tournament? I don't know, but he's got as much potential as anybody does. So those kinds of guys I think are really interesting. Another situation that two, I'm going to point out 2. We're going to kind of bounce around because this slate is absolute chaos, but I wanted to hit on an inactive that came in because this is something we're definitely going to have to, monitor throughout today, more so on the afternoon, I think, with the actives and inactives. But Aaron Jones is actually officially inactive today for the Green Bay Packers, meaning they have AJ Dillon and then Patrick Taylor, because Kylan Hill is also on the IR, I believe.
Yeah.
So, they've come out and said that they're going to play a little bit, right? Play it like a little bit of a normal game. Devontae then also came out and said, there's no goddamn way I'm playing this whole game, right? He might play a series or something like that. And so you have a matchup against the Lions that we've been like feasting on all year, but I'm leaning more so on the running back side of things than the wide receiver. And a guy that I actually really like in tournaments that's totally unknown is Patrick Taylor, the 3rd running back for the Green Bay Packers. And I'm not sure that it mattered with Aaron Jones inactive, but now I think it just opens things up for him. So starting kind of at running back, which we kind of tend to do, he was a tournament play that I actually like really liked. In a way, if everybody's going up and getting Taylor and everybody's getting some $6,000 running back or whatever, I can go down to the basement, get this $4,000 running back against the Lions, and then I can play Diggs, I can play Justin Jefferson, I can play AJ Brown. You know, if you want to go get Mark Andrews or George Kittle, I can do that and kind of flip my construction. What do you think about Taylor and kind of any other running backs that popped out to you?
Yeah, I like Taylor. A couple good seasons at Memphis. One of the things that I do in the preseason, and then this is sort of in some ways like that when we're talking about like the third running backs or whatever, it's not just to me, and we talked about this in a ton already. It's not just to me about who we think is going to play the most. I mean, that is a part of it, absolutely. But you also still have to be able, like the part that I think is undervalued or not looked at heavily enough is like, is the player good, right? And so yesterday was another reason why yesterday's slate was a really good example. We saw Cedric Wilson, we saw Kenneth Gainwell, we saw Quez Watkins, all guys that had strong production profiles out of college, guys that like in dynasty leagues I was looking at in later rounds. They're not guys that have necessarily shown the ability to play and produce at a really high level against first teamers. But one of the things we see in any kind of the predictive stuff that we look at for player skill at the NFL level is that production begets production. Guys that were really good in college and they come into the pros, even if they maybe haven't done a lot of things, like those, like Wilson, all three of those guys, Wilson, Gainwell, Quez, look like guys that have the ability to produce at least against, maybe they couldn't take it all the way to the first team, like elite level at the NFL level. But as soon as they start playing against backups, like these guys are going to put up numbers. They're good football players. And so Patrick Taylor anyway has a decent production profile, 36 rushing touchdowns in 4 years at Memphis, missed part of his senior year, but 29 over a sophomore and junior years. You'd like to see it at a younger age. That's one thing. Like if you're not sure about a guy, I would go look up his college numbers and be like, was he productive in college? That's something that for me would break a tie. Absolutely. Oh, I see some impressive popping production numbers in college. I'm interested in seeing that. I'm interested in seeing, can he do that in, even if it's a meaningless game, but especially because it's a meaningless game because he's not playing against starters. Can he do that at the NFL level? So guys like that, I think make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention him because, I'm a big Antonio Gibson guy. I also am a big Kenny Gainwell guy. I play a lot of college football, DFS, and Kenny Gainwell, after Patrick Taylor got hurt, actually was what vaulted Gainwell into this workhorse role. And Gainwell just proceeded to have 2,000 yards from scrimmage and, almost 20 touchdowns but Taylor getting hurt is why Gainwell got to play. Taylor was the starting running back over Kenny Gainwell, and Antonio Gibson was on that team. You know why Antonio Gibson played wide receiver? It's because of Patrick Taylor, because he couldn't get around Patrick Taylor, right? And we all like Antonio Gibson. He also got to play someone like Darrell Henderson, right? We all like Darrell Henderson as a good football player. Taylor rotated in with Darrell Henderson. And so to your point, I agree. The other thing I would add is, like you said, we're looking at these guys and like, are they good? Right? Like we need to understand if they're good. Like just plugging in Juwann Winfrey because he's 3K and like, God, we know Devontae is not gonna play much. It's like, I mean, I'm not trying to hate on Juwann Winfrey. I'm just using his name because it's the one that keeps popping up to me. But like, who cares? Just because he's on the field doesn't mean he's going to win you a DFS tournament. Like, and you have to be able to not only have the opportunity to produce, you have to have the skill to produce, and then you have to have, maybe the matchup or the situation. We talk every other week about all these matchups, right? We're trying to find the games that are going to shoot out, or, the running backs and the spots against the crappy defenses, blah, blah, blah. But then we get to this week and it's just like, everybody throws everything out the window and all we care about is who's going to try to win, right? Or which backup is going to be out there and play. And so I think when our opponents are not focusing on that kind of thing, that's when I kind of do want to focus on. So I really like Patrick Taylor because kind of all those things align for him. Carolina guy asked on Fanduel at 5.6K. It is a little bit more of a stiffer ask, but I also think he's just a better archetype of a play on Fanduel, where like, if he's not going to catch passes and stuff like that, if you get 100 yards and a touchdown from him on Fanduel at 5.6K, he's a smash.
Part of me is like, I'm not even looking at salaries this week. I mean, not like entirely, but like, what does points per dollar mean in week 18? I mean, I think there's ways to build out any lineup and just take a couple more sort of like off the wall plays. I do think you can justify more off the wall plays this week, obviously. And then really like from a points per dollar standpoint or anything, I don't think we're shooting for median this week. We're shooting for ceiling, obviously, those types of outcomes. You mentioned like other running backs. You mentioned Keyshawn Vaughn. Vaughn, I think, was somebody from a production profile that was a little bit questionable. I would say the other element from like this talent perspective, can a guy have an efficient game in these types of spots? I definitely look at like how they're playing at the NFL level in that current season, even in small samples. Like if they've shown us something like it's very basic, but I do like sometimes we get too caught up in the advanced stuff and it's like, yeah, this guy's done some things. Keyshawn Vaughn, long touchdown run. I think last week or recently, he's actually really struggled as a pass catcher. I had a couple bad drops, but like, it looks like, Ron Jones is out. Looks like he's going to play a decent amount. He could catch some passes, especially if they throw a lot, and has run a little bit efficiently. Another one that I'm like interested in, doesn't look great from a points per dollar perspective, but is Samaje Perine, who has looked great all year behind Mixon. Way back when, had a good prospect profile, but more importantly, like has looked good in this offense this year when he's played. If he I don't know, it doesn't seem like he's going to get a ton of run, but if he like the Bengals are sitting a bunch of starters, if like there are definitely paths where they're like, yeah, we're going to give Samaje Perine kind of like a nod. Like, hey, you've been playing really well as a backup. We're going to give you 20 touches this week. He's one of the dudes that jumped out to me that was like, seems like he's done the right things, played well, been the clear number 2 all year. And these are the types of guys that in week 18, suddenly the team says, we're going to give you the workload that you haven't had the opportunity to necessarily have. They don't have a lot to play for. So a lot of those teams sometimes go very run heavy. And so again, you might get a 20 carry game out of him. And at that point, I think he would blow away a lot of the point per dollar projections.
Yep.
I don't think that's a likelihood, but it's certainly possible.
He's also, we'll probably get to some of this. He's leverage on Brown's defense, which is going to be quite popular in DraftKings tournaments. Not so much on Fanduel, but the Perine thing is really funny. Another kind of like macro takeaway is we've reached this galaxy brain state of DFS where like a couple years ago we would get Joe Mixon out. Right. So Perine next man up. He's probably the chalk like 2 or 3 years ago in this spot. We have now reached the point in DFS where, and I'm listening to other people's content and stuff, and they're like, well, he's the backup and he does get to play a little bit. The guy plays like 15, 20 snaps or whatever in a real game. Right. And they're like, maybe they want to rest Samaje Perine too, and now people were like, well, what about Chris Evans? And what about Travion Wynn? We've reached this, and I'm not even saying that that's wrong, but it's just funny to think about now.
It could play out that way too. I mean, as I was talking about Perine, I'm thinking Chris Evans could catch more passes than we want him to hurt Perine's workload, and they might give Chris Evans as a young guy more work and say Perine's our vet backup. It could certainly play out that way. I mean,
but it's so funny, right? It's so funny that how this has evolved. And like you said, I don't know what the answer is either, but it's another one of those spots where, if I were MMEing, which I'm not, if I were playing 150, I would be maybe I'm heavier on whichever side I feel stronger about, Perine versus Evans, but I would be using those guys personally because no one is. It's not that like they're great plays or I really have any idea if they're going to pan out, but no one is gravitating to these guys, and there's clear opportunity, right? And it's not like the Browns are some absolute monster team and the Browns are playing for nothing. We're excited to play the Browns defense, and I get it. I get it, but like the Browns aren't playing for anything either, and so why can't the Bengals come out and have one of their running backs put up 20 fantasy points? Like, of course that can happen. Chat asked about, could it be Captain America season? Yeah, okay, that is funny. I didn't even put two and two together. Chris Evans, yeah. But Alex asked about kind of Patrick Taylor versus Keyshawn Vaughn versus Chuba and some of those cheaper guys. I guess Chris Evans and Perine into there too. For me personally, I actually do prefer Patrick Taylor to all those. I'm out on the Chuba thing, and not of interest to me, particularly in this matchup. But I'm not sure there is a matchup I would want to play. I would want to play him right now. I think Taylor versus Vaughn is pretty close. I prefer Taylor, but I think that's closer to a coin flip.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor's obviously a good play. Like, they're going up against Jacksonville. He has torched Jacksonville already a couple of times in his short career. He had a 200-yard game late last year against Jacksonville, if I'm not mistaken. I actually haven't looked at that, and then I think he torched him earlier this year. Maybe I'm just
JT. Yeah. JT.
And he's like close to several. incentives or records, right? Sorry, I don't have like the JT stuff like really locked up, but I know that like there are reasons. I know he's close to like 2,000 yards if he rushes for like 200.
Right.
Or he needs 266 yards for 2,000. I wouldn't put that past Taylor. Certainly would have to hit on some long runs, I think, to be able to do that. But he's obviously done that. And if he gets that early, say he gets a 70-yard run early, then they might let him go after it a little bit. They do need to win, obviously. If they were to lose, then we get into that scenario where the Raiders and Chargers could tie and eliminate the Colts. They're, I don't think, going to actually play for a tie, but you don't want to be in that scenario. I think Taylor has a huge game. I mean, I think they're going to give him a lot of work. I think people are like, will they rest him? No, they need to win to get in, and their whole offenses give Taylor a lot of work, and the Jaguars are not a good run defense. So I think he's a good play, but at the same time, like, hasn't been catching a lot of passes lately, not necessarily like a lock for 30 touches, you know, or he might be in the 20 range. And so there's reasons at his high price as well that you don't have to play him.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to catch me really saying anything negative. Even Slambert says, I mean, Jacksonville just got absolutely wrecked on the ground last week. And I mean, the Jags have given up. There's nothing for me to say really about the matchup that is, or JT himself. The only thing about JT is that, well, I'll say two things, and one of them is going to be pro playing JT and one is going to be con. So I'm really going to help the people out here, but I don't think he's the guy that is going to get steamed. Like if there's an expensive player that gets steamed, to me, it's Cooper Kupp. I don't think people are talking about Cooper Kupp or thinking about Cooper Kupp in the same way. Like JT, right? You just outlined every reason as to why JT has, you know, all the upside in the world, and they might just let him absolutely run wild. But people are still like, he's expensive, you know, and they could just take the foot off the gas in the second half. And I agree, that's certainly possible, but people are just would rather gravitate to some of these other running backs versus Cooper Kupp just feels like a lock, right? Like everybody's just like, I'm going to get my 25 plus points out of Cooper Kupp, so I'm just going to take him. And so I don't think JT will get steamed up in tournaments so much that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just played a 60% owned 9 or 10K running back, you know? So I like that. However, I do think enough people are going to be like, I'm starting this week just jamming in JT and jamming in Cooper Kupp. And then you start to, the next thing you know, JT gets enough ownership. I think he's like maybe a little bit over owned. And then I think there are a lot of other plays, right? We just outlined a bunch of cheap running backs and nobody's playing those guys. Somebody mentioned Dare. I don't particularly like Dare, but like, if you want to play Dare, like, I don't see why you can't play Dare either. There's a ton of options on this slate. It's just that you have to be able to feel a little bit uncomfortable clicking some of these guys in, right? Patrick Taylor, shocker, is not going to start the game. You're going to be waiting. You're going to be like, I hope, hopefully he gets in the first quarter or in the second quarter or something. But so that's why people don't really like that kind of a guy. They know, like, I mean, JT is going to get me X amount of points. So I just jam him in and figure it out thereafter. And so I kind of just tend to lean, like we talked about at the top, maybe moving a little bit more mid-range or just to a little bit more uncertain plays. A couple other running backs to hit on. If I am spending up, however, I really like Kamara as an expensive, more like kind of expensive pivot off of JT and possibly off of Kupp. They also have to win. Mark Ingram is out. They're playing the Falcons, who have nothing to play for and stink. I think, it's interesting that Kamara is in this role that we used to dream about, right? Workhorse Kamara, no Michael Thomas, no Mark Ingram, great matchup, must-win game, and nobody's playing him. No, nobody's playing him. So he's actually maybe my favorite kind of spend up on the slate. And then you do get into a bunch of kind of like mid-range guys, right? Sony Michel, obviously don't have to say too much about that except Cam Akers. We don't exactly know what they're going to do with that. I'm not personally worried, but some people do kind of seem to be a little bit worried about the Cam Akers thing. Devin Singletary, I'm not doing it. I know he finally had kind of the ceiling game last week, but he's another guy that projects fairly well, and the matchup is great. David Montgomery, the same thing. We talked about those guys a lot last week where, David Montgomery and Devin Singletary just keep churning out good games. But like, if all I got to do is fade 25 points out of those guys and try to find either a different roster construction or a ceiling game, right? Like Kamara has done it, can score 60 fantasy points. These guys just can't really do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Last one I wanted to bring up is Eli Mitchell. I actually like him more than
him up too. Yeah.
I actually like him more than those other 6K running backs, and he's not getting that much ownership. And I don't totally really understand why, but clearly just been a workhorse for Shanahan. So I really like him. Any other running backs?
I want to just jump on that San Fran LA game. I mean, that's a game where both teams have clear incentive. If the Rams lose, they can, in all likelihood will lose the NFC West, assuming that Arizona is able to do their side of things and beat Seattle. Not a certainty, but certainly a possibility. At the same time, San Fran needs to win to ensure that they're in, right? And so we have this game where both teams have clear incentives to be playing. They typically play pretty interesting games. San Fran usually plays the Rams tough, even when they're in like earlier this year, they were in a lot more like dire straits, but they played the Rams tough when the Rams were playing really well. We want close games that can turn to back and forth and be explosive late. I like Eli Mitchell, absolutely, like huge one. Jimmy Garoppolo is dealing with like a legit thumb thing, and it seems like he's going to play. They didn't activate. What is it, Sudfeld? That's their third guy, or whoever it is. They didn't activate, so Jimmy's going to play. That probably means more reliance on the run, but they do still obviously clearly want him in there to be more accurate in the short passing game. And nobody's going to play Debo. Nobody's going to play Kittle or Ayuk. And so that's another spot where, like, I'm looking at the San Fran passing game going, you know, just because Lance wasn't great for these guys, Debo has a ceiling every single week. Kittle has a ceiling, absolutely. And they're looking, you know, some of the ownership I've been looking at has them sub 5%. And so that's a team that I'm interested in broadly. I mean, they don't have a great team total, but we know they're going to go all out. We know they have a concentrated offense and legit ceilings for all of them. Eli Mitchell as well, and the receivers and Kittle. So yeah, I want to target that for sure.
Yep. I think that's, you know, somewhat clearly the most at least fun and potentially appealing game. Like you said, it's fairly concentrated on, I can't say for certain which 49er it's going to be, but I feel overwhelmingly confident every single week one of these 49ers is going to have like a score you want in tournaments. Like it just happens. Whether it's Debo, Kittle, it's typical, you know, it hasn't really been Ayuk this year, but he's started to emerge a little bit more here. I don't know that I want him with Jimmy, but point being, they only got 4 dudes. You can pick one, play him with Cup, play him in a game stack, playing with Sony, you know, there's a ton of different ways to kind of attack this game. Before we move on to kind of stacks and wide receivers, I want to hit a couple of these questions. Favorite 3.1K wide receiver, AKA cheap wide receiver to play on DraftKings. I will give a cop-out answer in that I don't like any of them. I know, like, I would just honestly kind of go to the projections. I don't really think any of those guys are nearly as strong as like what the expectation would be on a week 18. We kind of talked about that earlier. And I think they're all over-owned. Basically any of them that are any good and playable are over-owned because of kind of what we talked about. You need them when you want to play JT, Cooper Kupp, or whatever. So now you have some over-owned Juwan Winfrey team with the same construction and the same expensive chalk and stuff as everybody. So kind of a cop-out, but that's my general take. You know, if you want to like throw somebody on that's like in a game stack or something like that, by all means, but I don't really see any of those.
I would go.
Today.
I would say though, I would go to Green Bay. I think I would go to Equanimous St. Brown potentially, but I mean probably the Green Bay.
It's just hard, you know, when that's what the field is going to do too. It's like, oh, I need that, right? Everything looks beautiful in my lineup and I need a 3K guy. It's like, okay, there's only one team really where I can do that. Just making sure. Oh, D'Onta Foreman, before we wrap up running back, I think D'Onta Foreman also is a play. I like him a little bit more on FanDuel just because, I mean, we talked about Taylor not catching passes. Foreman's definitely not really going to catch passes. The Titans obviously need to win. And they'll ride him, you know, as their 2-down grinder in a good spot against like Houston.
That.
Natural pivot to a teammate of his who is a little bit tougher to fit on DraftKings, but pretty cheap and should be a little bit popular on FanDuel. But this game actually is interesting to me, mostly for like mini correlations, because you do have D'Onta Foreman and then you have AJ Brown, who, you know, Julio is back, but I'm not really sure I ever give a shit about Julio anymore. And we know what AJ Brown can do from a target share perspective, and the matchup is pristine. If they can't, you know, if Houston can compete, which we've seen Houston compete enough this year, I think that, you know, you could have a slate breaking performance from AJ Brown or D'Onta Foreman. And then on the other side, if you want to correlate it, there's one very, very clear and obvious dude who's getting double-digit targets every week, and nobody wants to play because he's on the Houston Texans, but Brandon Cooks. So I like those kinds of things.
Been consistently better under Davis Mills over the last couple weeks, couple months. I mean, It's something we saw. Mills missed a good chunk in the middle of the season, but their overall like yards per game as well have been very like their offense has been functional with Davis Mills at quarterback for an extended period. I mean, I certainly think when you point out that people don't want to play Cooks because he's on the Texans, like I certainly think that's a miss by the market. That's an opportunity. I also think Burkhead is a way to play it. I mean, you can go like AJ Brown, Burkhead. Like, what if the Texans come out and actually put up some points early, like they did against the Chargers? That plays really well into Burkhead getting a lot of touches, and then it is a potential path to AJ Brown's ceiling game where the Titans all of a sudden are like, whoa, we have to actually go out and win this game. Maybe they have an early fumble in their own territory, whatever. But let's say they get down 10-0 early. That's good for Burkhead. That's good for Brown. That's a script that suddenly could be a tournament winning, a little mini correlation.
So I really like that one. We talked a little bit about that Rams-Niners game. I don't think we need to talk a ton about that. We touched on the Josh Allen thing. He's definitely going to be popular, rightfully so. I don't really have anything negative to say about Josh Allen. Two games I want to get into because both are showing a little bit of ownership, whether it's on the quarterback, the stack, whatever. Let's do the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game first. Tyler Huntley is probably your kind of de facto popular cheap quarterback, and I actually really like him. I actually really like that game, even though it seems like a kind of gross divisional match, like Steelers-Ravens divisional matchup. That sounds awful, and I think that's part of the appeal because more times than not, that's what's going to happen. We saw last game, I think it was 20-19, not a incredibly exciting game, but I think the way both of these teams play offense, I don't think people quite are grasping both of these teams, particularly the Ravens, the way they play offense. Both of these teams are passing teams. I think we clearly saw that with the Steelers, right? You want to get narrative, right? Big Ben last game, they technically both have super minuscule shots at the playoffs, I think.
Yep. Neither's probably gonna make it.
Yeah. They have basically no chance.
They have to have the Colts lose is step one for both of them.
Yeah. And then the Chargers and all that. Anyway.
Yeah.
But both of these teams are passing teams. They're not particularly efficient passing teams. But the Huntley side is a runner and has basically two dudes you can stack him with, maybe a third, I guess, if you want to include Bateman. But also Mark Andrews would fill a tight end position that we know is bad. On the other side, we just saw the Steelers come out and throw the ball 1 million times, right, until the game was basically over. And now they get the Ravens, who we've been picking on their secondary for weeks and weeks now because they're trotting out a bunch of XFL dudes back there. I really, really like Deontay Johnson. I really, really like Chase Claypool. You have Hollywood also on the other side where, again, most of the time this game fails, but we have archetypes of players that Chase Claypool, 70-yard touchdown, Hollywood 70-yard touchdown. The next thing you know, this game speeds up. Both teams are throwing. And I think that, just because it looks gross, maybe it doesn't project awesome, people are off of it. But those are the kind of games I really like targeting. Do you have anything to add on that game specifically?
Nothing really to add. I agree with everything you said. There's definitely shootout potential with two passing teams. It has the low total. And I think probably 75% of the time it's a low scoring game, but 25% of the time it can really shoot out. I mean, we've seen that in some of these AFC North games. They a lot of them have kind of looked similar in that regard. The last time these two teams played, I think it was 2019, but we've seen, some similar games shoot out in different spots around the division that they all feel this way. They all feel like they should be projected low, but they have legit ceiling to them.
Yep. And so I just like those kinds of games for tournaments. This game does have a prop that I really like. I am buying the Big Ben last game narrative. So call me a donkey. I'm totally fine with it. I think they come out and do this passing stuff again like they did last week. And I think the Ravens are actually going to score and push them a little bit. I think you're going to see 50 plus passes here from Big Ben. And if you're getting 50 plus passes from Big Ben, Deontay Johnson is getting 18 or 20 targets. You know what I mean? Slight exaggeration, but maybe not. His receptions prop is 6.5. It was actually 5.5 earlier today. So if you go to BetMGM and you use promo code GRINDERSBET, no spaces, and bet $10 on Deontay, get $200 instantly as long as the Steelers score a touchdown, which I think might actually be the harder part of that. The harder part of that bet. I can't guarantee you that the Big Ben's going to throw a touchdown, but maybe he'll throw it to Deontay on his 7th catch, and you'll get it all in one. Also, for anybody that's been living under a rock, sports betting went live in New York. So if you're in New York, sports betting is now available to you. You can join all us people that have been living in the 21st century. And RG Rotogrinders has everything that you need. Go to the Rotogrinders homepage, go to the sports betting tab. I don't know if it's on the screen, but at the top, sports betting tab, and click New York. And it has every sports book available, every possible promo, offer, bonus, everything is all there for you here on Rotogrinders. So the game, getting back to these games and stacks while we got about 10 minutes left. The game that also looks fairly appealing, I believe it's the highest total on the slate that we haven't really touched on yet, is Arizona and Seattle. Also in the afternoon, Kyler should be fairly popular, at a weak quarterback position and a decent price. Obviously, without DeAndre Hopkins, all of his weapons are getting, projection boosts. We saw Seattle finally come back to life last week and win everybody tournaments. So they have a few different guys that you can play. Plus, Chase Edmonds is out. It's looking like James Conner is going to play. I don't know if you have anything to add there, but how are you thinking about this game for tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, Arizona needs to win. It's going to be in the same time slot as that Los Angeles game, and the Rams could certainly lose to the 49ers, who are playing to make the playoffs. So you have this scenario where Arizona's going to go all out because they could potentially win the division and have a home game next week if they get San Fran to knock off the Rams. Yeah, I mean, the game itself, I'm not in love with. Seattle looked great last week in terms of, like you said, elevating the overall game. But for most of the year, we know has just been a super low play volume team. They play incredibly slow. And Arizona can fall into that a little bit as well, especially without Hopkins. They haven't always been as productive. I mean, this team doesn't really have great skill position players, frankly. The fact that we have guys like Zach Ertz being so productive, I think, is a testament to Zach Ertz, certainly, congrats to him. But at the same time, it's also a testament to the fact that, Four is as decent from an efficiency perspective as guys like AJ Green have looked this year. AJ Green half the time looks like he doesn't even want the ball thrown to him. Antoine Wesley has made some plays, but is sort of just a guy out there. Christian Kirk is your number one receiver right now. You can definitely play Kirk. You can definitely play Ertz. I think those things are solid, but at the same time, because there's no real hierarchy, I almost don't know where the production's going to go. It can be Kyler rushing as well, which adds to the uncertainty. So it's a spot where there's a lot of it's projecting for a lot of ownership because of the high team total. And for me, it's unconcentrated offense on one side, other offense doesn't run a lot of plays. Not sure I actually love the spot that much.
Yep, that's pretty much how I feel. I'm glad we're in alignment. I can certainly see the appeal, right, of everyone, and particularly on this slate. I get why they're getting some ownership. I get all of that, but I just think it's one of those situations I would rather move away from, right? If I'm going to eat ownership, I would rather eat it in the Rams game, basically, is what I'm saying.
When a game catches a lot of ownership, you're just kind of is there a way this game can fail? And, I'm in a great spot if I just don't, have a lot of pieces from this game. And there's a very clear path to this one being a slow game. I mean, we know this from both offenses.
Yep. So the other game, we did touch on this a little bit, but a question in chat kind of reminded me, I don't really have anything negative to say about the Bills. I think the Bills are going to probably come out here and score a whole shit ton of points today. So Josh Allen, other than, again, the cost of Josh Allen, I don't really have, anything negative to say about him, even at his ownership, because there are just not a lot of guys that can come out here and put up a 40 spot or something like that. Even at skill positions, there's not a lot of guys that can just come and break this slate. Josh Allen is one of them. And I think his cost and his price on both sites is what's going to keep his ownership in check enough. And Flores in chat mentions Michael Carter. And I'm mad I didn't bring up Michael Carter on the running back time, but I think he makes for a really nice bring back. If you want to play an Allen Diggs, you can play Carter at low ownership, filling, he projects well. He showed finally 100+ yard rushing upside. We know he can catch passes, so he just does everything I really like in, a running back play in general, but also in a bring back to a Bills stack. Anything else on the Bills Jets?
No, not really. I mean, I struggle with Carter as a bring back because I'm kind of thinking the upside for Allen and Diggs is they just come out and steamroll the Jets a little bit, which means I probably want some type of pass catcher bring back. And that's tough to probably Crowder if he actually gets them run. Has the most like legit target upside. Denzel Mims, if he gets to run, has the most like big play potential at 3K. He's a 3K guy you can probably mix in there. I do like the Allen Diggs stack, and people aren't going to necessarily play it a lot. I think like Allen's projecting for solid ownership. I don't think that stack's necessarily going to be played as much as maybe it could be. You can always go cheaper with the Bills, and there's not great bringbacks. So anyway, that's like definitely playing an Allen Diggs lineup.
Yeah, I am gonna now kind of go back and renege on what I was saying earlier. If I were to play a $3,100 receiver or cheaper, it would actually be a Jet, I think, because I think that this game environment is going to be better. The Bills are probably going to be able to name their score versus the Packers. Like the Packers just don't really give a shit about this game, right? I like those guys fare well enough at 3K, but I actually think I would play Mims or even Jeff Smith. I think I'm not sure how the outside wide receiver situation is going to break out between Keelan Cole, Jeff Smith, and Denzel Mims, but I think one of those guys, I mean, Crowder is my favorite, but he's just a lot more expensive. But if I were going to play one, I think it would be one of the Jets.
And again,
guys.
to the talent side of things, like Smith is a guy we saw earn a lot of targets at various times last season. Not various, but a couple of times when he got good run, he had the potential for like 8 target games. Mims is a guy who had a solid prospect profile, good athleticism, and has had, certainly the explosiveness in like a yards per target perspective in his stat lines over the last couple of years, even though he obviously has not played a ton.
Yep. I totally agree. I kind of like him. I guess that would be my off the wall, like random 3K crap punt, the typical week 18 guy. I think it would probably be Jeff Smith. Going to hit a couple questions before we start to wrap up, because there is just, we would never be able to get to every game, every stack, and all that kind of stuff. So I want to make sure we hit some questions. First one, Slambert asks, because this is actually a fairly relevant thing for the slate, is, well, what about the Panthers, basically? And is it only DJ Moore that you're interested in? And for me, the answer is yes, to both. Do I have interest in the Panthers? Yes. And is it only DJ Moore? Also, yes. I actually really, really like DJ Moore. I kind of think when I'm just like looking at the projections and looking at DJ Moore's price, looking at the matchup, looking at the fact that Robbie Anderson didn't practice all week, I think he might be the most he's not low owned, but he might be the most under owned play of the slate. Like, you can stack Bucks and use him as a bring back. You can play him as a one-off, of course. You can play him with Keyshawn Vaughn, Mike Evans, Gronk, whatever. And like, because I guess people are just worn out from the Panthers and the DJ Moore thing, that we're just like not giving him the ownership, but like he could like have the highest target share of this entire slate. So I don't know what I'm missing that he's not one of the highest owned wide receivers.
I mean, you're not going to get me to say a bad word about DJ Moore. I completely agree with everything you just said.
So I will be, I'm just giving it away now. One of my like flag plants was going to be DJ Moore. So I'll pick another one, but I really, really like him today. And I think he's an example of like understanding like efficient ownership versus just saying, oh, well, look, we have DJ Moore projected for 20% on Fanduel. Well, yeah, he's projecting as like the 10th highest owned wide receiver. Like, he actually should probably be like the 3rd highest owned wide receiver. So he's under owned, even though he's not low owned.
Yeah, he's way too cheap for the size of his role. He's one of the only receivers with his types of market share and targets that have basically not hit some of the key statistical measures, whatever you would say. You can go back to earlier in the year where you had a lot of close misses on touchdowns in the first like 6 weeks. He had like at least 2 or 3 that immediately come to my mind. One that was reviewed that I think was a clear touchdown, got called a non-touchdown. Another one where Darnold missed him deep against Houston for an easy touchdown. Then there's, so people are looking at his stats. Oh, he only has 4 touchdowns again. He's had it the last couple of years. People think he can't score TDs, which is great because he can definitely, anyone can. We thought Devin Singletary couldn't. I sat here last week and said he couldn't. And Singletary has 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games after 6 in his first like 30 games or 40 games of his career. But anyway, Moore can certainly score the TDs. He can certainly hit the target ceiling necessary, certainly hit the efficiency necessary to put up a monster game, frankly. But I think there's concern about whether or not that ceiling is actually there. And so, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah,
at a cheap price.
The price is crazy. We talked about it closer to the top. There's really not that much value. It seems like, so that's why I think people are constructing lineups the way that if this was a week 12 slate and this was how the projections all aligned, I don't think people would be like, I got to jam JT and Cooper Kupp. but it's like that week 18 mindset, week 17, last week of the regular season mindset is in everybody's brains, where it's like, there has to be these 3K guys, right? There has to be. It's week 18, so, and I only feel confident in Cooper Kupp, so I have to play him. It's like, that's not really what the projections are necessarily saying to you, right? In all of these situations. Carolina asks about Debo. Ben kind of touched on Debo earlier and outlined the 49ers. Why is Debo so low owned? Just kind of the nuance of the slate, but
concern
Debo,
about
I love
Garoppolo, I think as well,
Yeah.
or not, like uncertainty about starting QB. I don't think anyone really ever reacted, to like the projections changing where it seemed likely that Garoppolo was going to start. I mean, earlier in the week, it seemed pretty likely that Lance would start. And so I think it's just it's been a slow moving week for people to recognize the 49ers are a spot that probably we want to be on.
Yep, I totally agree. So before we wrap up, there's a couple of things I want to just make sure that I didn't miss some major notable things. I do think Taysom at quarterback is really interesting. I talked about Kamara, who I'm a little bit more, if I were picking one, Kamara over Taysom, but I think somebody posted in the chat like the weather in Baltimore, and so Huntley is going to be more owned than Taysom, and then people are going to go up to the elites. And I think Taysom as like the 6th or 7th highest owned quarterback against the Falcons. We obviously know what he can do on the ground. They need to push him a little bit, obviously, for like a GPP winning score. But I think he's like notable. Obviously Stafford, and beyond that, there's not really much at quarterback. We didn't talk a whole lot about tight end, but you did talk about kind of Zach Ertz and the Cardinals as kind of guys we think are a little bit over-owned. He's the most popular tight end. And then kind of after that, it's fairly open. Kyle Pitts actually projecting to be fairly chalky, even though we don't know 100% that he'll play. I think tight end's the spot I definitely want to get different, whether it's just a different punt than everybody else is playing, or going up to the Kittles and Andrews
and correlate it. I mean, put it in as your bring back, put it in as your, a piece of your stack. I like Gronk. I mean, Gronk has some incentives that he needs to hit. I think Brady peppers him today.
Yep. And then I like, if you are going to play any of the like Cardinals guys, Gerald Everett is actually like mega cheap on FanDuel, like sub 5K on FanDuel. And if the Arizona is really going to score a bunch, you're obviously would need Seattle to throw a little bit more, and he's an easy way to kind of correlate and take advantage of that. All right, last regular season show of the year, and I don't have DJ Moore was definitely my kind of conviction play, my flag plant to wrap up the season on. But I'm gonna go. The weather has me a little bit triggered in that game. Devin posted the weather in the Steelers-Ravens game. But the perfect summation of this season for me is to flag plant a guy that is like a big play guy that's probably going to come out and catch 2 balls for like 24 yards, but he's going to celebrate a first down. He's going to celebrate a long touchdown today, and it's going to get everybody all pissed off because everybody hates Chase Claypool now. But he is the kind of guy in tournaments I want to play that can catch a 70-yard touchdown, right? Can make big plays or whatever, and you'll enjoy it more when you play him because he's going to celebrate it, and it's going to piss everybody off on Twitter because he's kind of a crazy man. So Chase Claypool is my other non-DJ Moore flag plant of this final week 18 slate. Ben, what do you got?
I'll say, I mean, I want it to be Stephon Diggs somehow or another. I guess one way to put it would be to say that Stephon Diggs outscores Cooper Kupp straight up.
Love that.
There's like going to be plenty of variance every week at wide receiver, right? I think Diggs has a big week, whether it's 150, 200. Like I think we were looking at a lot of yards, potentially multiple touchdowns. Dude still absolutely has a ceiling. So let's say he just comes in over the top of Kupp at like maybe 1/5 the ownership and 2K cheaper. So yeah, play him as your expensive receiver.
I thought you were going to say he's going to get the 260 yards or whatever it is that he needs for his like crazy incentive. But guys, thank you. We're running a couple of minutes behind. If you have any questions that we did not hit, I know there's a lot to cover on this slate. The crunch time guys will be here in just a few minutes. I'm not sure what our playoff schedule and everything is looking like between Ben and I, but if we don't get to come back, for next weekend, or moving forward, we'll figure something out. But thank you guys for joining us throughout the entire year. Had an absolute blast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the few good takes we had and plenty of the bad takes, but it was a lot of fun, and hopefully catch you guys next week. But if not, we'll catch you in the next season.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the NFL Incentive Show here on Rotogrinders. I am Brit Devine here with Mr. Tuttle and Kristi. I'm just kidding, guys. You guys have heard so much about incentives, and Devin just made a joke pre-show about it, so I figured I'd lead off with that. But Tuttle, what's going on, dude?
Not much. Just trying to get everything straight. I am a little wounded and trying to lick the wounds from last night's slate. Last night was brutal. Probably a look into what we're going to see today. We had the Tyreek Hill stuff go on, where he had a heel injury that we didn't know about, and then the Dallas starters played a lot longer than expected. They had Dak in the game up until the fourth quarter, so expect a lot of that. I think today there's stuff we can do to prepare and assume who's going to play and how long, but it's always up to the coaches, who are sometimes not very rational with their decision making.
Yeah, you know who won last night? Me, because I didn't play any of those football slates last night. So I definitely came out ahead of the general public. Kristi, what's going on?
Hey, I know I'm kind of just trying, like Tuttle, to sort through this slate. It's definitely a complicated one for the last regular season week of the year, but happy to break it down with you guys and anxious to hear what your takes are as well.
All right, so I'm going to host and give, now that I got sports betting at my fingertips, I'm fishing it up in the sports betting world. So maybe I'll throw a couple of those and let you guys handle some DFS. Kristi, you want to talk cash? Let's talk FanDuel first, and then we'll move on over to DraftKings. Or actually, let's just go sort of position by position, I guess is the lay of the land. I have the same quarterback on my cash team on both sites. Do you?
Yeah, I do actually. I think there are a couple different ways that you can go for cash. For FanDuel, I probably have a little bit more interest in Josh Allen, but with the wind in that game and maybe going a little bit more to the run, I think you could get a little bit scared off there. But I think Josh Allen is in consideration. Kyler Murray, I think, is in a great spot. And then if you're looking to save some money, I'm looking at Huntley or even Taysom Hill, kind of in the cash game realm.
Yeah, my guy I'm looking at is Taysom Hill. Who's yours? Who's like your favorite? I've got him anchoring both of my teams in a dome against Atlanta in a game they got to win. Seems like the perfect combination to me.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And I've kind of gone back and forth too. But yeah, I have a lot of exposure to Taysom as well. So I think he's a great play.
All right. Anyone else for tournaments Tuttle that we might want to throw into the mix there? I think my favorite to take a shot on today, it looks like our projected ownerships really low, might be a Tom Brady slinging it all over the field, especially because we've got Grayson as a cheap option to pair him with this week.
Yeah, I think there are still some pretty decent tournament options. Again, part of the problem is you're just going to have to figure out which teams are going to play the quarterbacks deep. A lot of that are actually teams that don't have anything to play for, but haven't been playing for anything for a long time. See like a Russell Wilson, who I think is an okay play in that game stack. He's really cheap on DraftKings. I like him a decent amount for tournaments, but also similarly like a Kirk Cousins, not a whole lot to play for, but they haven't had anything to play for a while. Word is that they're going to be a full go this week. Justin Jefferson's chasing some incentives. I know we like to talk about that. So yeah, I think both those guys are decent options. They've shown upside in the past. One vomit stack that I kind of find myself playing and I like it, and I hate that I like it. Andy Dalton. I think that Chicago Minnesota game is like a perfect mix of ugliness. And Darnell Mooney's been good when Andy Dalton's at quarterback. So I do like Dalton, Darnell Mooney stacks on FanDuel. And then on DraftKings, you can play like Dalton and Cole Kmet or Dalton and Allen Robinson stacks.
I mean, what can go wrong with Allen Robinson and Cole Kmet, who hasn't scored a touchdown this year in tournaments, right? I like Mooney and Montgomery and maybe Dalton and run it back with Justin Jefferson. And that can get you, a couple more expensive, at least one more expensive player, because all those guys are super cheap. So I don't hate that idea overall. Kristi, let's go running backs for cash. Let's talk Jonathan Taylor at first. I think you can get to him on both sites. I think FanDuel is actually a little bit easier, even though he's more expensive in my opinion, just because he plays all those rushes, all the touchdowns. The receptions don't matter as much as FanDuel. You can definitely get to him on DraftKings. Is he anchoring your cash teams, or are you preferring to maybe go with the mid-tier, because there are a ton of mid-tier 6K wide receivers, and maybe try to get a Cooper Kupp onto your teams?
Yeah, that's really the question. If you really want to try to get Taylor or Kupp in your lineups this week for cash. Right now I do have Taylor in on FanDuel, but I think there's some ways to go to with some of the great mid-tier options too. You even got Delvin Cook. We talked about that Vikings game a little bit. You're saving some money there. I think he works out just fine. In that same game environment, David Montgomery has been doing great. 7,600, like his price tag quite a bit. And then in that mid-tier, you've got guys like Devin Singletary, which, I think the Bills D will be pretty popular. So pairing, Singletary and the Bills D is a good play. James Conner, we don't know for sure, but if he's playing, he's in a great price point. Let's see, Deontay Foreman too. And he's in the early game too, but I like his price a lot and think he's in the cash conversation. And I think you could even throw Antonio Gibson in there. He's below 7K as well. And if you're kind of going in that mid-tier, those are some guys that I think really fit the cash game build. But yeah, for me, I do have Taylor in there right now in my cash lineup for FanDuel.
Singletary or Foreman on FanDuel. And you got James Conner, I'll throw into the mix as well there. Who you got between, maybe if you can only use two of the three, this was the problem I was running into. Yep. So who do you prefer?
Yep. I have Singletary as well. And then right now I have Foreman over Conner.
All right. For tournaments, anything late breaking? We've got the Packers running back Taylor. There's some talk about him. He's not really creeping into my cash conversation. Where do you stand on him as tournaments, as sort of a late riser that might be a little under-owned? And then anybody else you might have a take on, Tuttle?
Yeah, I've actually seen Patrick Taylor creep into some cash game lineups on DK specifically. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Obviously question what sort of ceiling he actually has. And I also question, the Packers are one of those teams that you're not entirely sure how deep they're going to play their starters. Is Dylan just going to go out there and get more run than we expect? I think is a possibility. So it concerns me a little bit. I think he's like an okay option, not scrambling to play him, but I think he's a decent option overall. One guy you mentioned in terms of later news, James Conner, we still don't technically have much clarity on if he's actually going to play or not. He's been battling the heel injury. I think going around is the fact that the Cardinals technically still do have something to play for. but they're not as incentivized as some other teams. They need the 49ers to win for their win to matter at all. So I do think Arizona is kind of in an interesting situation. I was pretty heavy on them early in the week, but I'm kind of more siding with shorting them as a team in general right now, because I think all their players will be pretty heavily owned in tournaments, and they're one of the teams I think you could kind of see like a surprise where they sit all their guys at half or something, if that Rams game is looking kind of in control for Los Angeles. But in terms of other running back plays for tournaments, so then we're looking at Keyshawn Vaughn, I think, is an option for tournaments. Again, it's another difficult situation to figure out in terms of how much he'll actually play, who will play the passing down roles with Le'Veon Bell, how big of a role he'll have. But I think for his price point, he's at least worth some sort of a gamble. Eli Mitchell, I think, is a pretty strong tournament option. We know when he's healthy, they just like to jam him the ball. I think that'll be the case again. You can see 20 touches for him, and he's not going to be very highly owned at all. There was one other guy. Alvin Kamara is the other guy. I don't think we've gotten any updates on Mark Ingram. I mentioned this last week. Ingram's status matters like everything. It matters everything to Kamara's workload. And we saw it last week. Ingram was inactive. Kamara still went low owned. He kind of sucked out in the receiving game, got a touchdown late. But if Ingram's inactive, Kamara's pretty strong leverage off of Taysom Hill, who's going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks on the play or on the day, especially on DraftKings. And he could see legitimately 90% of the RB touches if Ingram's a no-go.
I want to note too, I just got I like to search the stands for video of weather currently, and it is not great in Buffalo. Let me just say that the wind is howling in Buffalo. So all the reports of the wind possibly in that game are very true as it stands right now. So just something to keep an eye on. All right, Kristi, wide receivers for cash. This is where I don't think there's a consensus on basically any players this week, other than, of course, the old adage of if you have the money for Cooper Kupp, then you try to play Cooper Kupp. That seems to be has worked out all season, having basically the greatest fantasy season ever. What are you doing let's start on DraftKings, because if you play Jonathan Taylor, unless you play the Packers Taylor and also make a couple other concessions in other spots, it's reasonably hard to get Cooper Kupp on DraftKings today. And I think he plays obviously a little bit better on DK with the PPR scoring. So are you getting up to him, or are you starting your builds with a guy like Justin Jefferson, or basically foregoing all of the ultra high tier players? Because I think some of the 6K receivers paired with a cheapie looks reasonably well as a lineup construction to me.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Especially on DraftKings, it is harder to get Cooper Kupp in there. I do find myself landing more on Justin Jefferson, and I think he's a really good play over there too. But yeah, I find myself using maybe some of the more of those mid-tier guys. I really like Christian Kirk's price on Fanduel in particular. I think he makes he's probably a core play on Fanduel. But, guys like that, we talked about Darnell Mooney. He's at a good price point, like that game environment quite a bit. Had a ton of interest. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. Gabe Davis, I know the weather is really changing on that one, but he's popped in some optimals earlier on. Not sure if that changes with them probably looking to run a little bit more because of the weather, but I think he's fine. Allen Robinson is down to like 4K on DraftKings. Hasn't done a lot, but at his price point, I think you could certainly consider him for cash. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I think both of those guys too, you can consider as cash plays as well. And then AJ Brown. I know he was finding his way into some optimal builds too. So for me, it's pretty hard to get to Cooper Kupp, and you're kind of choosing Kupp or Taylor. I've probably leaned a little bit more towards Taylor, but I find myself a lot in the mid-tier.
Tuttle, real quick to you for the cheap wide receiver in cash. I'm going to list some guys out. Who's your preferred one? Grayson, Allen Robinson. You've got what's the Wesley for Arizona, and this is going to sound gross, but Laquan Treadwell's been getting it done for you as a cheap play. Also, probably not playing him, but don't sleep on him. I don't think he's an absolutely horrible play. Who do you have between those four as a cheapie?
Can I give a different one?
Yeah, who you got? You're going St. Brown?
Marvin Jones Jr.
You like Marvin Jones? Yeah.
I
I
actually was
think
gonna
I'd
mention
play.
him. Yeah,
I almost want to play Treadwell over him, honestly.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean
forgot to
it's
mention him.
ugly. I don't know if there's a right answer. To be honest, it's ugly. I do like MJJ a little bit though.
All right. What about in tournaments? Is there any particular takes, any passing games? Are you getting a lot of Cooper Cup and going cheap elsewhere? What's the lay of the land look like for you?
Yeah, I do like Cooper Cup. I mentioned Seattle passing attack before. I like them. Justin Jefferson, I think, is a pretty just strong tournament option. DJ Moore against Tampa Bay, I think, is a decent option. We still don't know about Robbie Anderson's status, but if he's out, things could siphon more to him. Darnell Mooney, I think, is another one that I think markets are a little slow to adjust when Dalton is quarterback for whatever reason. It's weird. He can get the ball and he smashes in those spots. I will say, like, Mooney's is so easy to play on FanDuel. I think he's going to be maybe semi-popular there. But I think he's a really strong leverage play on DraftKings because we kind of mentioned like Allen Robinson's only 4K. He's going to be owned. We mentioned Cole Kmet's 3.4. He's going to be owned. So I think Mooney could offer some decent leverage off the higher owned Bears plays on DK. I liked Stephon Diggs a lot prior to the win news. Still not sure how to handle that, and probably won't know how to handle that until we get closer to lock. But I do like Diggs in theory. It's just a matter of if the wind's going to allow him to have a big game or not.
All right. I see a question. I want to circle back to, we didn't talk FanDuel wide receivers, but Kristi, there's a question for you in the live stream chat from Zed Dude. He wants to know at running back, do you prefer Connor over Foreman? If we knew Connor was playing, I don't know if we're going to get that news. I'm expecting him with a couple of limited practices to play. Are you concerned at all with what Tuttle said of a benching, or are we just playing Foreman straight up in cash?
Yeah, I'm playing Foreman personally straight up just because, yeah, we don't technically know and just a little bit safer. And I think they're both really great plays. So that my lean is towards Foreman.
All right. And then FanDuel wide receivers, like the mid-tier, we've got Darnell Mooney. Tuttle just mentioned him. There's Christian Kirk. There's DJ Moore. There's a couple other guys you can maybe throw in there. There's Claypool if you think Big Ben's going to throw the ball 1,000 times in absolutely horrific weather there in Baltimore, by the way. You've got Russell Gage in a dome in his final game. I don't think that's the worst thing to do on week 18. Where do you stand on FanDuel? I just really couldn't get any of the expensive wide receivers over there.
I couldn't either. So I'm in the mid-tier. The guy that I like the most on FanDuel is Christian Kirk. I like that price point. So I've got him locked in. But I also like DJ Moore. I think he's at 6,100 too. So I like him a ton. Gabe Davis, again, I think if you needed to save some money, I don't mind that play at all. Russell Gage, you mentioned at 5,700. Think he's fine. And you mentioned Claypool too. And I think, he could break off a big touchdown run too. So I think there's a lot of GPP upside to Claypool, but yeah, those are the guys that I'm landing on too, and don't have as much cup in a lot of my lineups on FanDuel.
All right. Tight end, give me the lay of the land and cash on both sites in about a minute, if you can do that.
Yeah, I think Ertz is really the guy that's popping the most, in particular on FanDuel because of his price. So we have him projected for, I think, 18% ownership over there. So I like him a ton. Cole Kmet, I think, is a great value on both sites. I probably like Kmet as the DraftKings cash play this week, and Ertz as the cash game play on FanDuel. And then I think, you throw Kittle in there too. He's under 7K too on FanDuel now. So like him a ton. I think you could, if you have some money, he doesn't, he's not a bad play in the cash game conversation, but I think it's pretty straightforward where, you're getting some value with guys like Ertz and Kmet for cash this week.
Tournaments at the tight end position. We've got Mark Andrews, who's just salivating or vacuuming up all these short targets, but that is probably the worst weather of the week in that game, which to me doesn't bode well for the passing game, at least for Baltimore. If you're betting props, I do like the over, I think it was around 40 on Huntley on basically all sites. And Josh Allen is another quarterback. Rushing yards was like 32. He's going to run a ton in this game with the wind being so bad. But anyway, that was my little spiel on some bets I like. What do you like at tight end for tournaments, Tuttle?
Yeah, FanDuel specifically, George Kittle. I think we'll see. I mean, Jimmy G's expected to start. When Jimmy G has started, Kittle's actually been pretty decent. And I think he'll go a little bit overlooked this week. We still have him as the second highest owned, projected as the second highest owned tight end on FanDuel, but I think he'll probably come in a little bit lower than that. Gronk on DraftKings specifically, I think is a pretty strong tournament option. If you're looking for, I mean, it's gross, but if you just need an absolute min price option, which I have in some builds on DraftKings, Tyler Kroft, he's 2,500. I think he's playable. Obviously that weather, but like with Kroft, you're not looking for long games.
2 for 20 incoming.
That's what you want. 2 for 20 and a touchdown, and he could end up in optimal lineups, honestly, at his price. So it's ugly, but yeah, if you're looking for somebody cheap, Kroft is my favorite.
Yeah, if you play Kroft, make sure to do like the Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor combination, type of lineups to get the ultra stars and scrubsy type of thing. Real quick before we get to some questions, we are in the live stream chat as well as NFL Crunch Time. You can hang out in either one. I'll check both of them. I want to talk BetMGM. You get $200 if you bet $10, you get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. Use promo code GRINDERSBET to get access to that. This seems pretty easy. You bet on the Colts or the Bills, right? And you bet your $10 on the money line on that one. You win that, but then you get the $200 instantly when they score a touchdown, because there's gonna be some pretty ugly football games today. So touchdowns are not an absolute guarantee. So if you want to do that, pick one of the big favorites. And then if you want to check on Yahoo, I know they have the big overlay tournament. I'm not sure if there's any left in that, but if you want to check out Yahoo quickly, use promo code Grinders25 for a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. Okay, let's jump into some. Oh, actually, real quick, Kristi, defenses. The Bills, I think, have the highest projection I've seen for a defense on the blitz at 11.5. Are they worth spending up on FanDuel? They're 4,500. You can get to them. DraftKings a little bit tougher. How are you handling that?
Yep, on FanDuel, I think you should put them in your cash game play. The only other one that I'd maybe consider are the Vikings defense. If you needed to save some money and maybe pair them with Cook, don't mind that. But you're right. I mean, the blitz just absolutely loves Buffalo. So like Buffalo there. I think for cash, if you're looking on DraftKings, I think the Browns make some sense. They're at 2,600. So I could see them being in the conversation. I like the Vikings over there. Bills, like you said, are a little bit more expensive, but yeah, probably more looking at the Browns on DraftKings and Bills on FanDuel.
All right, let's get to some questions here to round it out. Let's see here. So I'm mainly in the live stream chat on Discord. If you're in the NFL Crunch Time, I will check that, but mostly I'll be in the live stream chat. A couple of questions. Flores Mark wants to know Antonio Gibson versus the Giants on DraftKings. So the weather in that game was supposed to be reasonably bad. The rain looks like it's going to hold off till later in the game. We saw the Giants basically, they've given up on the season and they just wanted to run Saquon Barkley 1,000 times last week. I'm gonna expand on this. Either a running back in that Giants Washington game total.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine for tournaments. The workload is the biggest thing that you would worry about. Gibson's been banged up the entire season. Technically does not carry an injury designation this week, but he's been battling shin injuries from the start of the season, hip, like everything. So workload would be the biggest concern, but that's also why he's not going to be owned. So yeah, there's certainly some merit to playing in tournaments.
All right. Shirtless Bobby wants to know in the live stream chat on Discord, should he move off Diggs and FanDuel cash now that the win seems bad? Would you go to Mike Evans instead?
For cash, yeah. I still like Diggs a ton for tournaments, but I do think that is probably the safer play for cash, but I still like him in tournaments for sure. Yeah,
I'm looking at the price range. I would, if you have the 100, I think Mike Evans for sure makes some sense. If you don't have the extra $100, AJ Brown and DK Metcalf would probably be my spend down choices for that particular spot. Reller wants to know Higbee, Hunter Henry, or Gerald Everett. We got to pick one. I'll pretend that's for tournaments today, Tuttle.
Higbee then Everett.
And Hunter Henry is just a far in the distance, in my opinion, on that one. Same with you for cash, Kristi?
Yeah.
If you have extra money, would you prefer Higbee over Cole Kmet? I think that's what, $600 on DK.
I do like them both, but yeah, I'd probably play Higbee over him, but I like them both.
All right, a couple other questions. I'm found these. So D-Dot wants to know FanDuel single entry, Kyler Murray or Josh Allen.
It's probably Kyler for me.
Yeah, I think Kyler. If there was a quarterback to get like 2 rushing touchdowns today, it's definitely Josh Allen though. So don't, even though his through the air might be a little tough, his ground game, like we saw last week, should exponentially increase, in my opinion. Diet Pepsi 1474, DraftKings cash, Jefferson and Montgomery, or Cup and Keyshawn Vaughn.
What was the first one more time?
Justin Jefferson and Montgomery.
I do like that, Jefferson and Montgomery. You could go.
I'd probably take that one. It's hard to not have the Cooper Cup, but Keyshawn Vaughn, I think there is some volatility in his overall game today.
Yep.
Let's see here. Any love for Antonio Gibson on FanDuel today? People seem to want to play players against the Giants. I don't blame them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good tournament play, and I think you could get away with it in cash too. I really do. I think he's a decent play.
Let's see here. I'm just trying to find a couple extra questions. Please post them, guys, if you have anything. This was, I believe, from the last show, but I think it's slightly interesting. Michael Carter on DraftKings, or basically any site today. Is anyone messing around with that against the Bills? Definitely not in cash, so I think it's more.
Definitely not in cash, but I mean, they are going to have to run quite a bit more too. So I don't mind that play actually at his price point. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities.
Tuttle, what do you think on DJ Moore in tournaments? I'm eyeing him in cash. I would like Robbie Anderson to not play. I think there's a reasonable chance Robbie Anderson doesn't suit up, but that is a late game. What are we doing with DJ Moore?
I think it's fine. I was on him last week. It ended terribly. But he has shown, like, he gets targets. Like, it's if things break his way, highly volatile play, but that's what we like in tournaments.
All right. Reller 11, he wants to know Mooney and Higbee or Everett and Kirk for a single entry tournament on DraftKings.
Mooney, Higbee.
All right, let's see here. I'm just making a couple tweaks to my cash game real quick on FanDuel. Looks like I'm leaving a couple $100 on the table. That's going to have to be the final verdict, because I just don't have time to mess around with anything else when you're on the show. Let's see, NFL Crunch Time, a couple more. So Mr. Knapp, he's got a DraftKings single entry. So this is a 3-for with a defense. So pay attention, Tuttle. So we've got Jefferson, Sony Michel and the Browns, or Lockett, David Montgomery, and Washington.
Well, the side, not Sony Michel.
So Lockett, Montgomery, and Washington against the Giants. I think that seems fine too. Why are you sour on Sony? Because Akers is probably going to get a little bit of run today.
Yeah, and we just got the report around Glazer said 25 snaps with upside for more. And I think that's more work for Akers than was initially in projections.
All right. Looks like I got to go find the sports books and hit some Sony Michel unders, Tuttle.
Yep.
I do like, I want to note the Elijah Mitchell. I heard Grant talking about it. Absolute workhorse. But if you, I think he's at like 68.5 yards or something like that. If he's basically assured of 18 to 20 plus touches on the ground, depending on how that game plays out, I think that's another great bet on Elijah Mitchell today. Couple other questions. Let's see. Bear stacks takes down GPP. So Daily Fantasy King, he's with you, Tuttle.
What was that? I missed it.
Bear stacks taking down tournaments.
I mean,
today.
it's ugly, but I kind of like him.
Zed Dude's got a good one. FanDuel cash, Kirk or Moore. You got to pick one.
I'd go Kirk.
Yes, I would play Kirk. I'm staring at DJ Moore because actually, you know what? Did I have extra enough money to get from DJ Moore to the next player I wanted? Let's see here. This is what I was trying to figure out. Oh, yeah, I can go from DJ Moore or Mooney. I think Mooney's probably a little safer today. Would you agree with me, Tuttle?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be the switch I just made on my cash team, just in case Anderson does end up playing. I want to make sure I do have at least a guy who should get plenty of points in that first game there. Hammer 74 wants to know DraftKings tournament. We got about 3 minutes left, so get your questions in, guys. Cook and Metcalf or Cup and KJ Osborne?
Cook and Metcalf.
I would play Cook and Metcalf. The Blitz loves Metcalf. I think it might be a little generous, but Metcalf has that giant touchdown option upside. He's shown that multiple times this year, so I think I would probably play that one. Let me go back to NFL Crunch Time. FanDuel single entry, Cooks or Lockett today, Tuttle?
Lockett.
I think Lockett, but don't sleep on Brandon Cooks. I think he's basically right outside the cash builds for me as I was putting my teams together. Diet Pepsi, want to know DraftKings cash Higbee and Robinson or Komet and Gabe Davis?
I think I'd go. You said Higbee and Robinson or Komet?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'd go Komet and Gabe Davis.
All right, Snuff. He hasn't heard anything on AJ Dillon. He said he seems to be in a smash spot. I want to urge some caution there. I don't think AJ Dillon will play much more than a quarter or a half before they turn it up over to their backup. I know his last name's Taylor, but Taylor is actually probably, if you're looking at a Green Bay running back, the guy you want to play. He would project to probably play at least half the game, if not 3 quarters. So just pay attention to that, Snuff. A couple more. Dalvin Cook, we got that one. It looks like the questions have stalled. I don't see any more in Crunch Time or in the live stream chat. So I guess I'm sure you guys, if any of you are in New York, right? All I got, let me explain to you guys what it's like living in New York. When you scroll Facebook, when you scroll Twitter, literally everything is a promotion for either, a sport, like a promoted sports book. It's literally taking over my life. I turn on Sirius XM. Every other ad is a New York sports book. I watch TV. Every ad is for a sports book. It's insane here. For some reason, any of you guys haven't signed up, click through the links here on Rotogrinders. You can join stuff. I'm going to be hopefully starting to become much more active in the sports betting now that it's at my fingertips. And if you guys just want the best bets, anything Grant posts on scores and odds, just go bet that, and you'll be living the dream, buying houses left and right like Grant does. So,
welcome to the club, Brit.
Yeah, what's going on? We doing any sports bets today, Devin?
I have a couple of. Well, I actually just got done putting in a parlay for the Tennessee game, of course, right?
All right. So I had a same game parlay on. This is my first dabble on FanDuel, but it basically involves Jonathan Taylor scoring a touchdown, getting some yards, and not getting any receptions. So this is what I'm hoping for personally. You like the same game parlays?
Talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, that's like it's basically playing GPPs with your bets, right?
Yeah, it's fun. You can get like +5. Like the odds came out to +500, and it looks a lot better than betting like the Jets to win today, right? Like it just seems like a much better proposition, and you're getting close to the same odds on the same game parlay. So it is something I'm gonna try to get on. I love having access to all the sports books and all the prop sites too, like Prize Picks. I'm thankful you can't get them in Tennessee, Devin.
Nope.
But I still have access to those in New York as it stands right now. So I play a lot of those as it stands.
Yeah, seeing the Chiefs prop shop Discord kills me because everybody's winning money on Prize Picks and Underdog, and I can't even touch it.
Yeah, so if you're in the live stream chat, it's right there above you. Just click it. It's the Chiefs prop shop. I know Chiefs in there basically all day, every day. There's a lot of other smart people that are in there as well with soccer and tennis and all this other stuff. I know Chief likes the was it esports. I'll chime in on basketball and football. But yeah, the prop shop is a great place to do some sports betting. Think that's going to do it for today's show. No more questions have come in. Enjoy your week 18, everybody. And I don't know if I'll see you again next week, but plenty of playoff content coming to you from Rotogrinders for the playoffs. So make sure you tune in for that. For Tuttle and Kristi, I'm Brit. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we out ya.